Hey everybody, and welcome to Kensington Online. My name is Patrick, and we're so glad that you decided to join us today. If it's your first time, I want to say a big welcome to you and let you know that we're going to be together today for a little bit over an hour. During that hour, you're going to hear some amazing music, a helpful message, and you're even going to have the opportunity to comment below and connect with the service host right here online. So we would love for you to do that. We're going to be sharing some of the main points from the message. You're going to get links to the songs and even some ways that you can reach out and connect with us if you'd like to do that. One of the ways that you can do that is actually going to thehubtc.com. That's thehubtc.com. If you can fill out that form, what will happen is one of our staff members will connect with you and answer any questions that you have about your experience today or even about our church. I also want to invite you to follow us on social media if you're not currently doing that. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and those are really the best ways to find out more about who we are and all that's going on around here, and even be able to see a behind-the-scenes glimpse at how it all happened. So we would love to connect with you on one of those social media networks. Well, I think we're about to get started. Again, we're so excited that you decided to join us today, and we'll see you right back here in just a few minutes.
Is coming, still you're calling me. Let's stand and sing together. When fear is exhausted, my hope exhausted, you will be my strength. When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. Yeah, I've decided I am not giving up. You won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out, I can let go. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out, I can let go. Echo in my soul. You keep repeating promises to me. Whoa, whoa, no, there's no stopping what you have started till it is complete. When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. Yeah, I've decided I'm not giving up. You won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. No, I feel it breaking out like an echo. Echo in my soul. You're enough for me. Yeah, I've decided I'm not giving up. You won't give up on me. You won't give up. Come on, hands up like this. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. You sing. I feel it breaking out like an echo. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. No. Your love is holding on, it won't
Wow. Thank you so much for singing with us. We're so glad you're with us as we continue in our series called Indivisible, where we tackle hard topics like faith and politics, but maybe in a way that's a little bit different than what you experience on your social media feed. So, welcome to Kensington Church. My name is Betty Dickinson. We're so glad that you chose to spend your weekend with us. If you are new or visiting us for the first time, we are so glad that you joined us this time. And we want to encourage you that we hope today and this environment is a safe place for you to explore your faith. If you are new, we want to encourage you that we have a special environment created just for you in the lobby called The Hub. There's a big orange sign, and we encourage you to stop by there, ask any questions that you have about our church, and we would love to get to know you better. But if an environment in the lobby isn't quite your speed or you need to go get your kids, we have an environment online called thehubtc.com. And you can log on there, ask any questions, and one of our staff will get back with you as soon as we can. Well, with that said, since it was Halloween this last week, I would love for you to greet the person next to you and ask them, what was your favorite Halloween costume you saw this year? For me, it was a group of kids that were fresh fruit that had giant costumes like this big. So go ahead and greet the person next to you and ask them that question.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Ryan. This is Carrie. This is Mike. We're going to sing a song called Grace Like a Wave. Obviously, it talks about grace. We all need it. Let's sing.
You brought me to the water where my soul can be swept away in the current of your mercy. And I know I'll never be the same. There's no limit to your promise. Jesus, you have done it all for me. Jesus, you have done it all for me. Yes. Grace comes like a wave crashing over me. Grace comes like a wave crashing over and over and over. I will jump into the water where my soul can be satisfied, and your love is overflowing from within me, and it won't run dry. There's no limit to your promise. Jesus, you have done it all for me. Jesus, you have done it all for me. Hey, grace comes like a wave crashing over me. Grace comes like a wave crashing over and over and over. Grace comes like a wave crashing over me. Grace comes like a wave crashing over and over and over.
Hands up like this. Come on. From the front to the back.
I feel the joy of the Lord in here. Amen. There's healing in the water with a love that flows so deep. Wash over me, wash over me. Forgiveness in the water with a love that flows so deep. Wash over me, wash over me. Telling you, salvation's in the water with a love that flows so deep. Wash over me, wash over me. Grace comes like a wave crashing over me. Grace comes like a wave crashing over and over.
Take all I have in these hands and multiply, God, all that I am, and find my heart on the altar again. Set me on fire, set me on fire. Oh, take all I have in these hands and multiply, God, all that I am, and find my heart. Oh, the altar again. Set me on fire, set me on fire. Here I am, God, arms wide open, pouring out my life, gracefully broken. My heart stands in awe of your name. Your mighty love stands strong to the end. You will fulfill your purpose for me. You won't forsake me. You will be with me. See now, here I am, God, arms wide open. Here I am, pouring out my life, gracefully broken. Here I am, God, arms wide open. Here I am, pouring out my life, gracefully broken. And all to Jesus now. Let's sing this out. All to Jesus now. We're holding nothing back, holding nothing back, 'cause I surrender. Oh, I surrender. Yes, I surrender. And I surrender. Oh, here I am, arms wide open. Here I am, pouring out my life, gracefully broken.
This is a little bit of a newer song to our church. We've been singing it for the last couple of weeks, and we were thinking about this series in particular. And if you're here and you didn't know, we're talking about politics. Whoopsies. Anyway, glad you came today. You came back. But I think the line that struck me so much about this song is talking about I'm strong when I'm weak, which is such a counterintuitive thing in our culture. It's a counterintuitive thing in the ancient culture that we feel like the scriptures were written in. And I think for us today, before we jump into the talk, before we jump into everything that we're going to do, I'd like to just pray for us. And what I want to pray before we jump into everything that we're going to do today, which is it's going to be so much fun, I promise, but I want to pray that that our hearts and our minds are illuminated in that truth. That, you and I are weak, and there are areas of our lives where it feels like we're powerless, and there are things that you've been trying to conquer that, you just hadn't fully done that, with you. There are things that you've been working on for months, years, decades, the whole thing. And so today what I hope that we all do, especially in this topic, is we acknowledge the fact that we're weak, and we acknowledge the fact that we're leaning into something that's bigger than us, it's more powerful than us, that's greater than us to do what we couldn't do on our own. So let me pray for us, then we might have a seat. Father, we thank you for that truth, and we thank you for the fact that we get to come to you in all of our brokenness, we get to come to you in all of our struggle, and we get to come to you as people who are honest and real and authentically saying we haven't got it all figured out. But God, I ask that you would meet us in that place, and on the other side of it, we wouldn't find a sense of being powerless, but we would find power in you and you alone. And we would find that you have met us in all the broken places, and that you are redeeming and resurrecting those broken places in our lives. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thanks so much for singing with us. You can go ahead and have a seat. Sorry, I should introduce myself. My name is Patrick. I'm the lead pastor here. We're so excited. Hey, real quick, I know I do this a lot. Carrie, come here just for a second. I'm going to embarrass the mess out of you. Come here real quick. Can you get up for Carrie and do a phenomenal job? I'll put my arm around you. I love Carrie. Carrie joined our team about 2 years ago? It was pretty early on, right? And I heard her sing, and I was like, well, dang. And she does such a great job. The thing you don't know about Carrie, and some of you may know this, but when she sings, she's in it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to go on. And I love that. And the reason is because at some point, maybe we'll have to figure out a way to tell your story. But her story is one where we just talked about, that she's found power in Christ. And so when she sings it, I'm on the front row like, all right. I think I'm the only one, but I love that. I just want to say thank you so much for being so honest and real. Can we get it for her one more time? This is just amazing. Such a great job. I've heard it death. Hey, real quick, if it's your first time, I would love for you to pull out. There's a card in front of you, in the seat in front of you, and here's what I'd love for you to do. Most of the time when people come to church for the first time, they like to be anonymous, and I totally get that. I'm the most introverted person that you've probably ever met, so I understand that. But what we're doing is we would really like to connect with you and answer any questions that you have. And so a part of that is in the seat in front of you, there's this little Connect card. If you want to, go ahead and pull it out. On the back, we're not asking for a ton of information, but we're really just asking for your name and email address, I believe, and number. And then I'll tell you kind of one thing about our church is we used to give out these mugs, which I love the mugs. The mugs are so great. Everybody likes coffee mugs, but we just kind of decided that you already have a favorite coffee mug, I think. At least I do, and one with our logo on it isn't going to make anything better in your life. But what we do want to do here is we are all about investing in our city and our community. And so what we've done is when you fill out a card, right, we've already designated the money. We're giving money away anyway. We just reallocated all the mug money to help a local school partner that we have called Traverse Heights Elementary. So fill out your card. We'd like you to put your name, email, and phone number on it. We'd love to connect with you and give you some more information about our church. But even beyond that, if you'll notice on the very bottom of that card, it says note to a teacher. And so in December of this year, what we're doing is we're giving them a bunch of notes from our church, and we're giving them some amazing things at the end of the year. And so we would love for you just to write a note to one of the teachers and say, thank you so much for all that you do. It can be as simple as that, but we just felt like that might be a good way both for you to connect with our church, but also to connect with our mission, which is very much being together for Traverse City. So if you want to go and do that, you can fill that out. And then the other thing I was going to let you know about, we're going to see what we're offering here in just a minute, is we're coming up to that time where we start talking a little bit about year-end giving, and a lot of you give that way, which is an amazing thing. And we get questions all the time, especially for people that have been attending, 6 months or less, like, so where does the money actually go? And we like to just be so transparent about what all that looks like, because when you give here, you're not just giving to put on a service, even though we love that and we think that's super important. You're giving to impact lives all over the world. And so one of the places that you're impacting the world that you may not even know it is on the other side of the world in South Sudan. And so a team of our videographers and people went over there to capture a story that, again, if you give here, you probably don't even know that you're giving towards these kinds of stories, but you are. And so I wanted to give you a quick glimpse into something that's happening on the other side of the world that you are giving to and that you're a part of. So let's watch this video together.
Has there ever been a time in history where we are more immediately inundated with news that tends to bring us to despair or to give up hope? Do you realize that when you invest in a year-end Christmas gift at Kensington, that the opposite is true? That you're actually seeing hope and joy and love and peace come to the world? We're seeing that in so many countries in the world, explosive church planting movements. And probably none is more amazing or more miraculous than what is happening in the new country of South Sudan. Reuben Mariakal, our partner, and his friends in South Sudan are putting their life on the line each day. They literally don't know from day to day if they're going to live or die. But in the midst of this, overwhelming peace is coming to the world. And so today, as you watch this amazing story of this unlikely hero, a man named Nicodemus, realize that you and I get to be a part of something that is so unlikely and so amazing. When you give, we get to be a part of what Jesus Christ is doing in the world.
In my country, peace is rare. People are so used to fighting that many have given up hope that things can change. But God says, blessed are the peacemakers. And sometimes those that bring peace are the ones that no one expects.
I'm in South Sudan, the newest country in the world, and it's located in East Central Africa. And this whole region has been in conflict and ravaged by war in the past 60 years. And actually, it's not getting better, it's getting a whole lot worse. In fact, the compound that we're staying in just a few weeks ago had a bunch of rebels that had come through with guns and threatening violence, and everyone there just did not know what was going to happen. Fueled by racism, political strife, religious persecution, the price of the conflict has been very high. There's actual active landmines just a few feet away from where children are playing. Everyone here lives in a state of uncertainty, not knowing what tomorrow will hold. They all live in fear and long for peace.
When you see a man having marks on the head or the shoulder, that one means the number of the people that a person has killed during the war. And then when you see the women, you see some women are having marks. That one also shows the husband of the woman has killed many men. They share that glory in the name of husband. So she acts like the husband is an hero. My testimony is about my sister's son. The child grew at my home for more than 10 years. When he was making the 12th year, the child was taken back to the village. He was transferred to the cattle camp. When he reached the cattle camp, they went to the field where the cows are grazing. Then another tribe that used to attack the Toposa tribe called Boya came and raided the cows. And then on the process of raiding, the child was caught by a group of more than 10 men. They used a knife, then they slaughtered the boy. The people took me there using a motorbike to the place where the child was killed. So I went and I saw the body of the child lying on the ground. One hand was cut, then the other hand also was cut. The leg was cut. The head is far away from the body. I was not happy. I became very hungry. So I buried the boy, and then I came back to the village. So I wanted to take one gun to follow the men where they have gone. My aim was to go and clear them all. As you see this mark on my face, these 3 men have killed 3 people, and I was used to it. What was in my body, in my heart, was only to have a revenge. I was only aiming for a revenge. Then one gun which was left in the village was hidden somewhere because they knew that I loved the boy, and my aim was, if I am to get a gun, I was going to clear even 50 men in that place. So I grew very annoyed, in which I was even almost to hang myself when the people went and hide the gun. The only way was to go and hang myself, but the people went and advised me.
Tormented by the death of his nephew and unable to find his gun, Nicodemus reached a level of despair that led him into considering taking his own life. It was while searching for a weapon in a nearby village that he ran into Reuben Miracle, who would eventually become his mentor and spiritual advisor.
The life that Nicodemus had before getting Christ, his aim was to be the hero of the village. And being a hero is to raid as many tribes, the surrounding tribes as possible, is to kill as many people as possible. But once he encountered Christ, there was a radical change in his heart.
Other people went and advised me until they brought me back to Kopeta here, whereby I met with Pastor Reuben and then with other believers. They had to advise me and say, that's not the way. Try to have peace in your heart. So I went and I stayed for more than 20 days until I forgive those people. Christ replaced this problem in me. I had to have peace again. As I am now, I'm going always to the church. I am also advising others who have the same grievances like the way I used to have.
So I see Nicodemus, and he no longer views the other tribes as enemies. He views them as objects of the grace of Christ, and they're candidates of heaven. And that's why he has now the desire to reach out to the other villages as his friends.
Since his encounter with Jesus, Nicodemus has been radically transformed. Under Reuben's guidance, he now plants churches in the very fields where the Toposa, Dinga, and other neighboring tribes have violently clashed for centuries. Armed with nothing more than the gospel and a motorcycle, he brings peace to a region that many believed impossible to reach.
So we have 2 communities in our location here. So we have the Dinga community and then the Toposa community. These 2 communities are very hostile to each other. So when we planted the church here, the Toposa and the Dinga were able to meet together. So what they did, they have to reconcile. Those who accepted Christ, they were able to meet together and then they worship together, they became one. But in other areas whereby the church is not planted, the war still continues. Many blood is being shedded every time. But we saw really a church can bring peace in a community.
The mission of our ministry is letting the light occupy the land. And we see darkness manifesting itself in different forms. The greatest is spiritual darkness. There is intellectual darkness. There is darkness of hatred and violence. There is socio-economic darkness. And we see, as we are in this land, our ministry is to become hands and feet of Jesus and shine the light and let the light occupy the land. I see Nicodemus maybe finding his fellow warriors in the other village as friends. Even his friends who are raiders, they were 10 in number. His gang of 10 men, and 6 of them he has evangelized and they have come to Christ. When all these guys who are warriors come, they are now warriors for Christ. They are not taking the spears and guns, they are taking the gospel to the next tribes. I see this hope, and I can see changes will be here in years to come.
Jesus means everything to me. In the first place, I was lost. I was a sinner. I was a killer. I was robbing. I used to do many things which are not right. But when Christ came into my heart, I have now hope of being with the Lord.
I think when Christ is taken out of the equation, there's no hope in this country. I mean, governments can come with policies, but that cannot transform the hearts of people. It takes only the power of Christ to transform the hearts of people. If it's just empty philanthropy, helping people and doing that, there could never be hope. But when we are preaching Christ, who is the Prince of Peace, I'm sure ultimately the Prince of Peace will be able to bring peace to this country, so there is hope.
Isn't that a powerful story? The beauty of, yeah, absolutely. The beauty of that is this, and this is one thing that I wish that I could sit everybody down here and kind of just say to you, is when you're part of this place, you're part of something that's extraordinarily big, that's happening all over the world, and you're a part of changing people's lives that you probably will never ever meet. And so what we want to do is just say, for those of you who give consistently, thank you so much for doing that. But even beyond that, we know that when it comes to this time of year and year-end giving, a lot of people kind of designate their funds towards the end of the year. And when you do that, you really are helping people both here in Traverse City, but you're also helping people globally, just like Nicodemus, and to bring truth of the gospel all over the world and to help people all over the world. Again, people that you may never, ever, ever meet. And so what I would like to say is, as you're kind of thinking through your year-end giving, I know we're several weeks away from that, but as you're thinking through that, I'd love for you to consider Kensington. And for those of you who are like, you know what, I don't even know if I'm a follower of Jesus. I don't know if I believe the whole God thing. And what I would say to you is, especially this time of year, if you're not giving somewhere, we would encourage you to give somewhere. It just does something to your heart. Now, I think this is a great place to do it because of stories just like that. But, we would say that you should give somewhere, and we would love that, Kensington be one of the places that you consider doing that with. So I want to go invite our ushers to move forward. Now, we're going to receive our offering this morning. And again, thanks so much again to all of you who give. And if you're looking for different ways to give here. Obviously, we do kind of the passing of the buckets, but we also do it online. And so if you're not giving online, it's one of the easiest ways to do it. You can always go to kensingtonchurch.org/give. That's one of the best ways to give. You can give right on the app. That takes like less than 30 seconds to do. And then once you set it up once, you can do recurring giving that way. And then the third way is you can also text to give. So you can always just text 779 or Kensington to 77977. And we'd love to invite you to do that so that we can continue to be a part of stories just like Nicodemus. The other thing I want to tell you locally that we're a part of right now is our Thanksgiving baskets. And so that's coming up here in just a couple of weeks. And so what we're trying to do is gather $50 donations to cover one of these baskets for a family who may not be able to put together some of the things that all or most of us in the room would probably do for Thanksgiving. And so what we do is we gather those resources together, and then we all come together, pack these Thanksgiving baskets, and then distribute them all over our city. And so a couple things that I'd ask you to do there. I'd love for you to consider your family giving one of these baskets, and then I would certainly love for you to be a part of helping to pack these and then distribute them all over our city, especially if you have kids, or grandkids. This is a great opportunity for kids just to see what serving looks like and to meet families in our community. So we'd love for you to do that. That's Saturday, November 17th. Now, you can give out in the lobby or any of the places that we just talked about in giving. And the other thing I want to let you know about is Render's coming up November 14th. We'd love for you to be a part of that. How many of you come to Render before? Anybody been to? Yeah, a lot of you have been to Render. It's fun. Yeah, if you come to Render, everybody loves, it's so much fun. Everybody loves Render. We sing together. We take communion together. And then I always jokingly say that it's a shorter message, but that's almost never true. Kind of kidding. But anyway, I'd love for you to be a part of Render. It's a great environment. It's coming up November 14th, and we'd love for you to mark your calendars for that. All right, with all that said, again, today we are in the middle of a series, or we're wrapping up a series called Indivisible. And if I'm really honest with you, so this is just kind of me being super vulnerable, I wanted to do like a 12-week series on this, and I was the only person in the world who thought that was a good idea. And so we decided we're going to do a 2-week series. And so today, I'll tell you a little bit more about this as we move forward. But today, it's going to be a little bit of a different talk. And so if you're coming for the first time, or especially if you're a church person and you've been to church and you're like, is this even church? It's a good question. I think it is, but we're going to do things a little bit differently today. And to kick off the message, one of my favorite artists is a guy named John Mayer. He's an amazing guitar player. Any John Mayer fans out there other than me? Yeah, great. I'm a big John Mayer fan. And so with that, there's a song that he came out with years ago called "Waiting on the World to Change." And so we're going to play that before the talk. The reason I wanted to play that before the talk, I'm not going to play it. The talented guitar players up here are going to play it. But the reason that we're going to do that is the words of this song, I think, really bring light to the emotions that a lot of us feel right now. And that's really where we're going to kind of start from in the message and then move forward. So let me say this before we jump into this song. If you're a first timer and you're like, I didn't know that we were going to talk about politics today, or if somebody brought you, I promise you they are more nervous than you are right now. And they told me this morning, please don't suck today. So just know, that's okay. Everybody's a little bit angsty. Everybody's a little bit nervous today as we talk about it. But I do want you to know that what we're going to talk about today is super important. So to get our minds thinking in that direction, the song's called "Waiting on the World to Change."
All misunderstood. They say we stand for nothing, and there's no way we ever could. Now we see everything that's going wrong with the world and those who lead it. We just feel like we don't have the means to rise above and beat it. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. Keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. It's hard to beat the system when we're standing at a distance. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. Now if we had the power to bring our neighbors home from war, they would have never missed a Christmas. No more ribbons on their door. And when you trust your television, what you get is what you got. Cause with the only information, they can bend it all they want. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. Keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. It's not that we don't care, we just know that the fight ain't fair. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. We're still waiting on the world to change. We'll keep on waiting on the world to change. One day our generation is gonna rule the population. We keep waiting on the world to change. We keep waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting on the world to change, waiting on the world to change, waiting on the world to change, waiting on the world to change.
All right. Well, we couldn't have had a more intense video before the message, right? I mean, that makes everybody nervous, which I'm excited about. Hey, so let me tell you a little bit about today. So let me give you a disclaimer, if that's all right. Again, if you've been to church, or you're a church person, and you come to, even if you attend here, the way we approach most of our messages is typically what I'll do is I'll kind of highlight a tension that hopefully most of us feel, and then we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about what the scriptures say about it. And then what we try to do is give like an application point. And the way that I typically do this too, I want to give you a little bit of a disclaimer is, and I get dinged for this a lot, but I don't typically bounce around the Bible very often. I like to hang out in one passage because at least for me, I like to kind of go deeper in one area. So every once in a while, people are like, you don't use enough Bible. And I'm like, we did 32 verses in the same passage, you know? So today's going to be a little bit different, though, in the sense that what I want to do for the next few minutes is I'm going to tell you essentially what I've been thinking about in terms of how we relate to each other in politics for about the last 9 months. And I wanted to be able to create this, beautiful, amazing tension. The problem is I think you already feel it, right? I don't need to spend a lot of time talking about political tension because most of you have had a conversation with somebody that went bad. And anybody, like, you had a conversation about politics and it took you about 37 seconds to realize, oh no, they're on the other side. And then you walked away, you know what I mean? And, you did that. And so the reason that we're talking about this is because there's a deep polarization in our culture, right? There just is. There's just this deep polarization or two sides. And then even beyond that, there's like the two-sided assumption in our political culture. But that when you get deeper than that, we'll talk about this in a few minutes. When you get deeper than that, there's a lot of people that don't necessarily even fall into one of those two camps. They're just not sure, how to vote. And, that's coming up in a few days. We'll talk about that. And so last week, what we did is we talked about you and we talked about the posture of your heart. And I challenged really everybody that was attending our churches to say, for 1 week, try not to talk about politics, but focus in on your own heart and focus in on these 3 areas, right? Focus in on minding your own rhetoric, like thinking about what you say before you say it. And I know that sounds kind of redundant, but that's hard. That's hard for me, right? I'm going to pause and really think about not just what I'm saying, but what does what I'm saying do to the people that are listening or, for a lot of us, reading on Facebook, right? The other one is this, embrace guilt by association. And this is a big one, and we'll talk about this a little bit more today. But my hope for you is that you have so many friends that are so different than you that it causes you to see the world differently, right? And we said this last week, the curiosity, right? Craig Lang said this. I thought it was so good. Curiosity is really the antidote or the cure for a lot of the animosity that's in our world, right? And so if we're curious with, each other and we try to understand each other, it's a great starting place for where we need to be. And then we said this, that at the end of the day, a large part of our goal in terms of our conversations, especially if you're a follower of Jesus, is to elevate the dignity of those whose position you most adamantly oppose. Right? I may not agree with you on how things should work. I may not even agree with you on what should happen. We certainly don't agree on the politics thing, but I and my posture towards you will elevate the dignity of you as a human, and I will elevate the dignity of other people. And we talked about this with President Trump, right? And everybody got real nervous as soon as I said those two words in here last week. It was fun. You could watch it in the room. It was like, it was that, right? And what I said is this, that for those of you, right, who have been, a follower of Jesus and that sort of thing, and you vote Republican, which is, we're not going to tell you how to vote, I promise, but if you vote on that side and you dismiss the words that President Trump has said that degrades women, that degrades, immigrants, that degrades all, we could go down a list, and not just the speculative sort of things, but the actual things that have been said, and then you elevate the policies over that, then what you're doing is you're kind of showing the world that, hey, we believe in this, but what about this? And everybody's looking at evangelicals going, what? And so the question for us is going like, how do you navigate that sort of thing if you're a follower of Jesus, right? How do you do that? And we said that when it comes to that, you have to acknowledge and elevate the dignity of all people. And when it doesn't happen, it should break your heart. And then I flipped it on the other side. For people who are followers of Jesus and adamantly oppose President Trump, I understand that too. But the thing is that we said last week is if you then turn it back and do the exact same thing to him that has happened in terms of the lives of other people and things that are said, or you use language to call him certain things, or, and that doesn't break your heart, it's the same sin in a different way, right? And so that's where we left off, and everybody was like, I don't know if I'd come back, but a lot of you did, so I'm so glad you did. And so we said these three things. Now, when we said these three things, this is what we're going to talk about. Again, I told you for a week not to focus on politics in terms of outwardly. I want you to focus on it inwardly. And so I got so many emails back from you. I love it. I love looking at your emails. I got emails from friends who are watching other states, people downstate. I love this. A lot of people are watching, and the questions became, and this is the tension point, is, okay, I'm going to focus on me, but I really have something to say, and I really want to talk about it, but I don't know how to talk about it. And then I got one email that was so great. I read it late last night. It was from a friend of mine. And she said this. I thought she worded it so well. She goes, if we mind our rhetoric, isn't there a temptation that we might not speak at all? Like if I'm so worried about all I'm going to say, what if I don't speak? And so I'm going to tell you today I'm going to adamantly and as loud as I can say, I want you to speak up. And every introvert in the room, where are the introverts at? Any introverts like me? You're like, I'm an introvert. Why are you asking me to raise my hand, right? Introverts like me, I'm talking to you today, right? I want you to speak up. And, for me as well, our family, I want you to speak up. And I'm certainly not going to tell you which side. So make sure that we're not at all touching that. But I want to talk about how we do that. I want to talk about how we can have conversations and relationships with people and elevate the dignity that I feel like Jesus calls us towards in a way where we can have great conversation that leads us to solutions in our world. Because it deeply rooted in my heart, I'll just tell you, all my cards on the table, I believe that the hope of the world is the local church and not in buildings and not in guys that Britney Spears might give in sermons and not musicians, not all that, but in the people that are followers of Jesus released to help others be transformed and mobilized, right? To see amazing stories happen. I think that happens through people just like you. And I think when it comes to the political realm, right now, as tense as it feels and as hard as it feels and as this as it feels and you're scrolling and you're angry at your weird uncle, like all those things, I think we have an extraordinary opportunity as the local church to do something extraordinary. So what I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about today is the word civility, right? Now, civility is such an interesting word, and depending, on who you listen to when it comes to Jesus, there's either side of this. Like some people say, he was so civil and he figured it out. Other people are like, no, he wasn't. We'll talk about that in a second. But when we define civility, I actually came across this definition from a book by Brene Brown. It's an amazing book. I'd love for you to read it. We're actually going to put it online. Some of this content even later on, I think she said so well, so we'll be quoting her. But here's what she says, and she's quoting the Institute for Civility in Government. She says, civility is claiming and caring for. All right, let's stop there. The basis of what civility is, it's claiming and it's caring for one's identity, needs, and beliefs without degrading someone else's in the process. Now, I want to read that again because there's so much packed in this. Civility is claiming and caring for, saying you have thoughts, you have ideas, you have a worldview, you have all that, I have that too, and I'm going to acknowledge that we have that, and then I'm going to care for mine, and in the process, I'm also going to care for yours. Claiming and caring for one's identity, needs, and beliefs without degrading someone else in the process. That it is possible to have a conversation with somebody about politics and it not end with your mama is, ... right? That it is possible to have a conversation with somebody about politics and everybody not walk out of the room angry. That it is possible to love and care for and claim the dignity and the ideas of someone else without it ending with... Now, with Jesus, civility is always an interesting thing. Because when you read the New Testament, there are moments when he seems like he's extraordinarily civil. And then there are moments that he says things like this. He says things like this. Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites. As it is written, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. Wow, you know? Like there are moments where Jesus says, that was amazing. Jesus says incredibly difficult things. One of my favorite passages of scriptures is my favorite, John 2, chapter 15. He goes into the temple. Rabbi goes into the temple. And so he made a whip out of cords. Well, what does that mean in Greek? It means a whip out of cords. And drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle, and he scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. Jesus lost his crap in the temple. Theologically, don't email me about that. But you get it, right? He got angry. He got angry and he showed it and he expressed it in a way that made people go, I don't know how I feel about that. And then what happens on the other side of this, which I love so much, is they don't go, why did he get so angry? The question they asked was, under whose authority do you get to do this? And he said, I'm the Son of God. And you know what happened next? They killed him. Mark 3, chapter 5, it says this. So he looked around at them in anger. Now, what do we mean by anger? Anger. And deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. And these are religious leaders of the time. And then my favorite one, you know, and again, hopefully if you have kids in here, it's okay, but he says this. He says, you brood of vipers. Now, you don't say brood of vipers. Nobody really says that. You're not in an argument with your wife and you're like, brood of vipers is what you remind me. You don't do that because you enjoy your life. You don't want it to end, right? You brood of vipers. This is, you know, we're not going to say cuss word. I don't think it's necessarily a cuss word, but this is strong language. And he's calling out what they were doing and what was driving them to do it. How can you, who are evil, say anything good? For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Now, the beautiful part about this is everybody's like, well, Jesus is so nice. He's carrying lambs. He's petting the dog. Like, oh, Jesus. You know, Jesus had this, you know, ferocious kind of thing going on at times. And he called out the injustice and the posture of the heart of people who were saying they were following God all over the place. And then the same Jesus, as we talked about last week, says, blessed are the, what's that word? Peacemakers. We said peacemakers, not peacekeepers. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And so when it comes to civility, I'll tell you, for years and years, I struggled. Because when you look at what Jesus says and you look at what Jesus does, there are moments where he's like, is that civil? Is that kind? Is that peacekeeper, maker? What is that? And what Jesus does is we find Jesus painting the picture of what the new kingdom is. And when there's a misalignment on posture, especially of religious leaders, we see him speaking so directly and so honestly and so bluntly and calling out those injustices. So before we jump into how to do this, I want to can we just all be real clear for a second? And this is where we'll get the emails. I love it. But we should not be silent on issues that matter. You shouldn't be silent. In fact, I talk to followers of Jesus all the time, and this is the bigger tension that I think we feel, and I feel this all the time, but I don't know how to talk about it. I agree that we shouldn't be silent, but I don't know what to say. Or I agree that we shouldn't be silent, but I don't know how to say that. Or I don't feel informed, or all those kinds of things. And I get that. Which means this, I don't think you should be so loud and uninformed and ignorant. That's not what we're talking about. It doesn't mean that you should share every Facebook post that agrees with you and like, that's good, you know. And then the website is, you know, pandas//.au/cows. Like that's not, wow, that was awesome. That's the coffee talking. The goal, let me tell you, the goal isn't that. I don't think it's uninformed, ignorant, and it's not that. The goal for you as a follower of Jesus, and I think for those of you who aren't followers of Jesus, I think this principle is still true for you, is the goal with other people is influence. Now, here's what I mean by this, and here's what we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about today. Is okay. There are fringe people in our country that I don't think will ever listen to this message and go, oh, okay. And that's okay. And some of you may be here and you're on the fringe of this and you're never going to be, oh, okay with that. But for those of us who are in the room, right, and you want to see actual change happen, it's not forceful, I'm loud, and I'm going to yell about it, I'm going to post about it, and it's not that. And you know how you know that? Because the person who disagrees with you that does that has no influence with you. The person who is like that with you, they just don't get anywhere. You may shake your head, you may argue, you may go, you may have your little ninja, ended, you have your talking points and all that. But at the end of the day, the goal for us is influence in our culture and in our world. And for those of us who would say we're followers of Jesus, I want you to look at me just for a second. We have lost so much influence in our world because oftentimes we have, as a whole church, we have just not sought or been seeking to understand what other people say. So, that's my big intro. Now we're going to talk. What I want to do for the next couple of minutes is I'm going to tell you 3 questions, and these aren't random 3 questions the preacher guy pulled out. These are my 3 questions in 2018 right now, and as simple as these questions are, here's what I'm going to tell you. As simple as these questions are, I think answering them honestly is one of the most difficult things that I've done in the last year. And it's so difficult and it's painful when you actually start looking at it, but when it comes to politics, when it comes to having great conversations that lead to relationship and influence, I think these 3 questions are great guides for us in how we can navigate this well. So the first question is this: what am I doing? Not what is everybody else doing, not is what your mother-in-law doing, not all those things, but what am I doing? And let me just preface it, and this was helpful for me. And by that I mean, what am I actually doing, right? Because there's a narrative that you say in your head where you convince yourself that you're a good person, and you are a good person. Right? You're a good person. Everybody loves you. You're a good person. You don't do a lot of bad things. You're good. But when it comes to your world and the impact that you're actually making in it, what are you actually doing? Now, some of you vote, and I think that's amazing. And please vote. Vote this week, right? You should vote. But beyond that, what are you doing to be engaged politically in making our country a better place? Now, some of you, and this is what we're going to talk about, New York Times just released an article this last week, which I thought was so good, that focused on evangelical people that are millennials and how they feel within this climate. And the term that they use is politically homeless. Because in a dualistic society, oftentimes what has been felt by a lot of people is, I don't fully agree with this, I don't fully agree with that. I'm kind of like, it's almost like a hodgepodge of different things that I agree with. So what do I do? How do I vote? How do I navigate that? And what oftentimes happens is when we don't have clear answers for one side or the other, what we do, and don't miss this, is just sit around and talk about it and think about it and all this. And I'm not making fun of you because this is me. I struggle with this all the time. When I look at something and go, I don't know what to do or I don't know what to think, but I'm just gonna keep thinking about it. I can keep thinking about something for a decade and never do anything, right? And so the question that I want to talk about just for a few minutes is what are you doing? What are you actually doing? What am I doing? What am I actually doing? And so around this, I had 3 kind of ideas, and this may feel a little bit scattered, but hopefully this is clear enough for you. The most difficult thing that I had to do over the last couple of years, especially when it comes to this, is I had to accept personal responsibility for the world that I'm called and you're called to create. Now here's what I mean by that, and this is so important because nobody necessarily disagrees with this, but so few people actually do this. That I can't just point to the things that frustrate me and say, that should change. That if I am actually going to be a part of the change in the world, and I'm actually going to choose to have a voice in the world, I have to accept personal, not my wife, not my kids, he's 2.5, so one day, but I have to accept my responsibility for the world that I'm trying to create, which means this, for those of you who are in the room, you have kids, or you're married, or, significant others, that you accept personal responsibility for the world you're creating at your home. That you accept personal responsibility for being involved in your school. You accept personal responsibility for being a part of the change that you want to see in your workplace. And for those of us who are followers of Jesus, you ready? In the New Testament spreading of the gospel and this movement, It spread in large part because of a group of people who were so passionate about getting involved in what mattered. If you want to look in history, when women in a lot of ways were elevated and, dignity and was felt in the world, the early church was doing this in amazing ways. Jesus taught on this, and all of a sudden people got real uncomfortable. Like, well, you can't do that. You can't say that. What about? And all of a sudden they begin to elevate the dignity of all people. They begin to take this truth of the gospel beyond Judaism and to the whole world. Why? Because individually they accepted personal responsibility for what they were contributing to the movement. Which means if you don't have, don't miss this, a clear, tangible answer for how you are taking personal responsibility in politics, you can post all day long, but please stop. Because what speaks so much louder in our country is what you do and how you lean in. Second one is this. I think you have to speak with conviction, passion, and informed thought. This is fun. I don't think you have to be the most politically minded person on the planet. You don't have to need to know everything about everything. But when you speak, you should speak with conviction. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to speak and yell. And that doesn't mean you have to be loud. The most powerful people that speak with conviction are oftentimes the softest voices. But you have to choose what you're going to speak about. And don't listen, it's not everything. You're not passionate about everything. You're not passionate about everything that the party that you're passionate about is passionate about. But what are the things that have broken your heart and have gripped you? What are the things that keep you up at night? Who are the people that you find yourself drawn to? And when it comes to those moments when you see this misalignment in what could be and should be and the vision for the future that you believe should be there, you should speak, and you should speak passionately with conviction, and you speak with clarity and informed thought. I don't think anybody in this room, and some of you are super smart, so yeah, there's a few of you in this room that are like this, right? None of us are going to be so, versed in everything. But we can be so well versed in certain things that have gripped our hearts that we can make a significant difference. And the last one is this. We talked about this last week, and I'll talk about this probably every week that I'm on stage. Is you have to build relationships with people that are drastically different than you. It is hard to have an opinion about something if you don't know somebody and are in a relationship with somebody on the other side of that so that you can see a different view. Some of you, you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s now, and you have a different perspective than you had in your 20s. And you know what didn't change was your logic. What changed for you was a relationship. And all of a sudden, that thing that you were so passionate about became very focused on a person, and your mind shifted. You begin to see it. And there she is. Question number 2, and this one's tough for me, and this is where we're going to spend probably the bulk of our time. How am I doing it, right? How do I actually get involved in these things? How do I get involved in these questions or these conversations? How am I actually going to do this? Now, we said this last week, and this is where I think the beginning place of all the conversations start, is that I will elevate the dignity of every person because they bear the image of God. And if you missed last week, I think you should go look back. That's exactly where I think all of this begins. Now, the second part of this, and I kind of want to give you a preface. We're going to change it. We're not going to say it out loud. But most of the stuff that I'm going to quote has a phrase that most of us probably don't use in front of our kids. But I do want to give you a heads up on this, right? What I want to talk the most about for the next few minutes is not truth or lying or fake news and that kind of thing. I want to talk about this just for a second, right? BS, right? Can we say that? Everybody feels real uncomfortable, but this is, and I'm going to tell you why I'm going to talk about this for a few minutes, right? We'll give you a great quote. It's going to be clear. So for the next few minutes, as we talk about this, we're going to use the word full of it, okay? The people that I'm going to quote say something different, so I'm not misquoting them. We're just saying full of it, okay? Because there's kids and my mom is watching, right? So now here's what this means. I want to read you this quote, and I want to walk through it slowly because I think this is so important for us, right? Let me read you this quote. Someone who lies and someone who tells the truth are playing on opposite sides, so to speak, in the same game, right? So the center point is truth. The person who tells the truth acknowledges the truth, tells the truth. On the other side of that is the person who lies, still acknowledges that there is truth and goes the other way. And each responds to the facts as he understands them, although the response of the one is guided by the authority of the truth, while the response of the other, and don't miss this, defies that authority and refuses to meet its demands. This is telling the truth and this is lying. This is not being full of it. The person who is full of it ignores these demands altogether. He does not reject the authority of the truth as the liar does and oppose himself to it. And don't miss this. He pays no attention to it at all. The center point for the person who is lying is truth. The center point for the person who's telling the truth is truth. There is no center point for the person who is full of it. By virtue of this, I couldn't figure out how to do this grammatically. BS is a greater enemy of the truth than lies are. Now, I think this quote is so fascinating. This is by Harry Frankfurt, and this is out of the book that I was mentioning earlier from Brene Brown. This is why this is so important, and especially in our political climate and how we engage with it. Lying is a defiance of the truth. Being full of it, or BS, is a dismissal of truth altogether. And this is why this matters so much, especially for those of us who are followers of Jesus. Come on, look at me just for a second. If you're not, you can cheer probably after this. When we are part of things as followers of Jesus that are not true, we position ourselves to lose all influence. Which means that you can stand on a stage and preach about God all day long, but if it's not true, it's not true. And then oftentimes I think, this is me, at least in the relationships that I have, people that I talk to, and when you look at surveys, right, people are leaving the church in a lot of ways because it feels like this full of it mentality, especially when it comes to politics. So look at me for a second. Those of you who are followers of Jesus, if you're not, I don't know, morally, you could probably go do this all day long. For those of us who follow Jesus, I don't think we get that option. It says followers of Jesus, right, I already say this, should be known as being rooted in truth. Now, look at me for a second. Which means that of all the things that could be said about people who are followers of Jesus, being full of it should never be one of those things. It should never be one of those things. Why? Because we built the whole thing on truth. I am the way, and the life. We built the whole thing on Jesus, who is the truth. Now, don't miss this. That doesn't mean you don't get to have varying opinions. That doesn't mean politically we're not on different sides. It doesn't mean we're fighting for this. But it means when you are uninformed on things that you speak overconfidently about, and I do the same thing, and people do this all the time, then we begin to lose influence. Compromising with truth is always a compromise of influence. And at the end of the day, you can be loud on one side or the other, but you can't compromise on truth and ultimately have influence in the long game. Which means that for those of us who are followers of Jesus, come on, don't miss this. Anytime we choose to compromise on truth, anytime we're engaging in things and we're not there, we lose the high ground in terms of having influence in our culture. And this was like a month and a half of me just like feeling like poop, right? I felt terrible because I was like, how often am I overly confident about certain things? Now, when we talk about the full of it thing, this is really honest. This is me. And I think a lot of us are this way, probably not just me. Hopefully, if not, it's going to feel like a confession. But I have an opinion about most anything you ask me about, whether I know anything about that or not, right? That you can ask me just about anything. I'm like, well, let me tell you, I can have an opinion about that. And I love this. My wife and I were driving back from Ohio last night. We won't talk about the Ohio part, but we were driving back from Ohio. I'm just kidding. Michigan jokes. Yay. We were driving back from Ohio. My brother-in-law got married, and we're talking about this. And I loved the conversation because we both started going, here's an area I just don't know that I know all that much about. I was thinking, I believe this. I think about this. Why do I think this? We were talking about it. And the question then becomes, in our rhetoric, in our conversations, I don't think you should be silent. And I think you should be fighting for what you think and trying to understand and moving the conversation forward. But don't miss this. When you speak overconfidently of things that you're not informed on, or when you speak overly confident on things where you haven't thought through how it affects another individual, I'm just telling you lose influence. And for the local church, you ready? For the local church to be, which I think it is, the hope of the world, for amazing things to happen, for the moral compass, I think, of our country to kind of move in the direction it needs to go, I just believe with all my heart. We've got to find a way to move away from being full of it sometimes. And saying a really crazy phrase, and it's a hard phrase, and it's a hard phrase for me. And I don't like to say it. I should say it a lot more than I do, but the phrase is, I don't know. Or, better yet, here's what I think. And when we do that, oftentimes, and this is the hard part of me, I feel dumb, I feel stupid, I feel like I should know. But you can't know. You're not going to know everything. But in a conversation with somebody who disagrees with you, adamantly disagrees with you, if you lean in and go, you know what? There's a reason you think that, and I haven't ever thought about it quite like that. And you know what? I don't know how to respond to that yet. You know what stops happening? The boxing match. You would take off your gloves. You're like, oh. You know what that's called? Humility. It is hard to fight with somebody who goes, I don't know about that yet. I'm going to find out. But I don't know yet. Thanks for sharing your opinion. Now, just for a second, can we just pause? For those of you here in the room who are not followers of Jesus, those of you who are watching online because you were curious, can you just imagine for a second if every Christian that you came into contact with simply said, I don't know, on the things that they didn't know about? What would that have done to the relationship and your perception of the church? All right, so here's what I did. And I spent a lot of time doing this. I was trying to, even this morning, I want to say this so clearly, I even adjusted a couple of them. But here's kind of my guardrails on this personally. There's a few of these, but this is hard. That's what I would say. Is I will give you the most generous benefit of the doubt in a moment where there's contention in a relationship. Now, what that means is this. I'm going to make the assumption on your intention that you are not against me or what we're hoping to achieve. Now, sometimes they will be. But beginning with the intention and giving the most generous benefit of the doubt that you can give to somebody takes so much of the tension away right off the bat. In your most heated debates with people, sans your crazy uncle at Thanksgiving, in your most heated debates with people who disagree with you, if you both start at the place that I'm going to give you the most generous benefit of the doubt, when it gets to the tension points, you've positioned your heart to see the best in the other person. Second one is this. I will seek mutual intent and fight the bigger enemy. Can we say this together? With you. Let me say this one more time. I will seek mutual intent and fight the bigger enemy. Can we say it together one more time? With you. And this is hard. But when you understand that the bigger enemy is not the person that you're having an argument with, that the bigger enemy is what you're fighting for together, it changes the whole dynamic of the conversation. In Brene Brown's book, she has a great example of this. I'd love for you to read it. But when she talks about this, she talks about a very hot button issue. And the question that she asked really gets to the heart of, we agree that we are both frightened by, and they fill in the blank. And we agree that something should be done about, and they fill in the blank. So now let's talk about how we get there. Now, come on. If you're believing the best in somebody and you approach it that way to actually understand what the mutual intent is, that deep down we're both just scared about something, or deep down we're both just frightened about what could happen, but deep down we're just not sure about, all of a sudden the conversation goes a different direction. It's a hard one, especially for those of you who are super type A and you're like me, where everything feels like Monopoly, right? Just me? Okay. I will seek connection over conquering. That I'm not seeking to win the whole thing. I'm seeking to connect with you to figure out how we move forward together. You know what this is not? Almost every political Facebook post. Come on, you read them. How do I win becomes the goal. The goal is connection with each other, right? The other one is this, and I already talked about this. I will say, I don't know if I don't know. In fact, this one, really, these four, if people would just apply these four, the tone of all of our conversations, I think, would drastically change. Number 5 is this. I will prioritize reliability and accountability, right? That I will allow you to hold me accountable to things that I say that are full of it. And on the flip side of it, I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can to make sure that what I say is reliable. Does that mean you have to spend 20 hours a day researching everything? I don't necessarily think so. But I do think that when it comes to the things that you're saying, the things that you're talking about, the things that you're passionate about and speaking up for, that you should be as informed as possible on both sides of the argument. Number 6, I will speak truth and embrace it as a foundational starting place. Come on. I will cure in myself the full of it syndrome. I will ensure that the foundational place is truth. And when I feel like I'm losing, I will ensure that the foundational place is truth. And when I feel afraid and small because your argument, you said it better than me, and I don't even say things well all the time, then I'm not going to be tempted into talking about things that aren't true. That I'm going to allow myself to live in the place where truth reigns. The other one is this. I will be passionately honest. So you're in church, so don't lie, right? Just for a second. Other times you're fine. But right now, how many of you are the conflict avoiders in a relationship? Anybody? Be honest. Nudge the person if you're sitting next to him. Like, you need to raise your hand, you're in church. Go ahead. Keep them up for a second. I want to talk to you for a second. This is okay. Right? This is all right. Right? But I hope, and our world needs you to be passionately honest about what you think. Which means that you're going to feel trampled on sometimes. But it's not just about you. It's about moving this thing forward. Now, who are the people that are like me and you're the opposite of that? Anybody? Right? Keep your hands up for a second. I need you to shut up more. Right? Right? Here's why. Everybody look at me for a second. We have the opportunity to create space for people to have a voice. Which means if your spouse looks at you like, I just need you to, and you realize you've been talking for 2.5 minutes. And it was all full of it, but you were talking for 2.5 minutes, you know? Come on. One of the best disciplines that you could ever learn is to be passionately honest at the appropriate moment and to create space for other people. The last one on this list that it seems so simple to say, and I want you to hear me say this is, for me, the hardest one out of all of them. But it's, I think, probably the most important in terms of commitment level. Is that I will be vulnerable. Now, in our society right now, and I know it feels this way, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, every once in a while on Snapchat, like, feeling vulnerable in a culture that feels so like this means at times you're going to feel small, and at times you're going to feel stupid, and at times you're going to feel like you don't have it together, and at times you're going to feel like somebody trampled on you, and at times you're going to feel like I can keep going. This is just me, right? But the world needs more people who are willing to be vulnerable and risk. And not in the full of it category, but in the honest truth, the way that I see the world, the way that I see the world on behalf of other people in the world. Which means at work, come on, you need to figure out how to be vulnerable at work. Tanya, who works on staff here, she sent me this article. She's a part of, I think, the local SHRM, and they had this article, I think it was the first one in this week's email, this month's email, and it talks about civility in the workplace. I thought it was so good. I was like, trying to train HR directors how to help people be more civil in the workplace. I thought to myself, there's an easy answer for that. If everybody would just be more vulnerable. Which means that you're going to take some shots, and that's okay. Which means that you're going to feel all those things. That's okay. But if you are inviting other people into a vision that is beyond you, trying to work towards something that is bigger than you, a bigger enemy than just 2 party lines, and you're vulnerable about it, and you put the other person first in a lot of this, and you put aside being full of it, the conversation, I'm just telling you, the conversation shifts. And the last question that we're going to wrap up is this one. Where is my hope? And then the harder question for me was, would other people know this by my posture? At the end of the day, in a few days, we're going to elect more people, and we're going to figure, that thing out, and a lot of you are going to go vote. I hope all of you go vote. And some of you are going to feel like, this is the best day ever. Some of you are going to feel like, oh, God, The question for you is, where actually is your hope? Now, for those of you who are older in the room, right? If I can, I just want to slice off the crowd just for a minute. It's 55 and older. And I just picked the number. So again, 55 and older. I want you to do this because I'm 30, right? I'll be 31 next week or next month. I don't know why you need to know that. I just wanted you to know that I'm closer to 55 than you think I am, right? Those skinny jeans. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so we're taking the 11. All right, so my generation needs you to remind us that we have walked difficult roads before. There's a pastor in Atlanta that I used to work with. He did this. He said, stop scaring the children. This election, right, is not going to mean that the whole world falls apart tomorrow. And there's people that are going to adamantly disagree with me and comment. Some of you probably commenting right now on Facebook. And I get it. But some of you are old enough to know that there was a time in your lifetime where everybody was as contentious and it was difficult and the civility may have been different and there wasn't, Twitter, or some of you would say the Twitter, right? There wasn't that, right? But come on, you know that we have walked this road before. For those of you who are followers of Jesus and you're, 55 and older, you also know that your hope isn't in Congress or House of Representatives or in local elected officials or a president. Your hope is more than that. And I'm telling you, and I know it sounds so weird, we need men and women who will stand up to remind us that we have walked difficult roads before and we will walk difficult roads again and we will be adamantly opposed to each other. And we have seen terrible, terrible things happen in this country. And we've seen us move beyond that into better places. And even though sometimes it feels like this, that there is resurrection happening all around us. And our hope isn't in any of those things. For, I love this. Because for him, all things, being Jesus, were created. Things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. So for those of you who are 55 and older, just for a second, I need you to become like preacher people. And you can and should talk about politics. But what would happen if we all found ourselves at a place of being centered in our world? Not in all the things that we put our hope in, but we find ourselves being centered in a world where Jesus is at the center. 55 and older, we need you to speak up. For those of us who are in our 30s and we're way overconfident about everything, we need to listen. For those of you who are in your 20s and you're more passionate and you have more energy than any of us in the room combined, you need to be loud and you need to be informed. And for those of us who would say that we're followers of Jesus, we have a commitment to make. The commitment is this, that I will be engaged, I will be civil, and I will be centered. In a world that feels like chaos, that we will breathe life into the chaos through our centeredness and point to what is bigger than us and beyond us in Christ. So, with that said, I want to invite the band out. I wanted us to end this series. I knew this months ago when we were talking about it, with one particular song as this reminder. And so, hope you go out and vote. I hope you apply these things that we talked about. But today, as we wrap up, and I'm going to ask you to stay if you would. If you got to leave, I understand, but I'd love for you to stay as we do this. The song we're going to sing is a song called Living Hope. And what it does, ultimately, is it paints a picture of what we believe about God, what we believe about you, what we believe about Jesus, and even bigger than that, what we believe, in some ways, about our world and how we get to respond to turbulent times and divisive moments. Is that our centeredness and our hope is found in Christ alone. So I'm going to ask you to stand. I'm going to pray for us, and then I'm going to ask you to sing this out. Now, I say this every once in a while because I just deeply believe this. As we sing this out, right, I'm going to ask us to sing it as a prayer. So I do this every once in a while, but just so we're all clear, where are the bad singers at? Where every bad singer in the room, including me, raise your hand. Keep it up just for a second. We know you're bad. And all the good singers, you don't even do anymore because I'm going to call you out, right? Yeah. I'd love for us to sing this out. I'd love for us to sing it out as a prayer. And if you're not a person that usually sings in church, that's okay. I'd love for you to do it anyway. But I'd love for us to do this. And what I want this to be, just so we know, isn't just a song, but it's kind of this corporate prayer for all of us. Those of us who are followers of Jesus, singing this out. If you're not a follower of Jesus, you get over the next few minutes a perfect picture of what we believe about God and you and politics, the whole deal. But I hope that through these next few moments, as we sing this out as a prayer, that our hearts find its way to be postured in the way that God's called us to be. So, let me pray for us. Father, we thank you that we're never alone and that you have met us in our questions and you have met us in our doubt. You have met us in our pain. You have met us in the moments when we've tried to talk about this and miserably failed. You've met us in the moments when we've talked about it and been great. God, we know that you have sent us into our world to be a part of it and to be a part of what you're doing to bring resurrection to all the broken parts. So I just pray for the person in the room who is very anxious all the time about speaking up or even talking about these kinds of things. God, give them the courage to speak up. Give them the words, give them, the grace for themselves to say things not great and to push the needle forward anyway. I pray for the people in the room that feel helpless. God, I pray that you would help them to see just how much power they have in the areas of the world that they get to create in their families and in their lives and the kids that they're raising in their schools and their workplaces. God, help them to see that and engage fully. And God, I pray for all of us in the moments where we're tempted to deviate from truth. God, bring us back to a place where that becomes kind of the chief pursuit of our conversations and how we fight for one another, not against. You got to pray that a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, God, we would see you do something amazing in our midst, bringing people together, bringing our country together, bringing unity in our country again, and bringing a sense of dependence on you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
How great the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. Sing the cross. The cross has fallen. I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. All right, sing this together. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. And out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe. And out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Jesus is yours, He's the
Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for those of you who came the last 2 weeks. Appreciate you being a part of this and for trusting us with a politics series. That's great. So thanks for being here. If you're new, we'd love to connect with you over the next few minutes. So we're going to be out in the lobby. I'll be out in the lobby. I'd love to meet you if it's your first time. If you fill out one of those cards, I forgot to tell you what to do with it. That's my fault. I'm a little scattered, as you already know. So I'd love for you to take that out there or drop it with the ushers on your way out. We'll grab that from you. Real quick, Baby D, a lot of you are wanting to have your kids baptized, or I'm sorry, be a part of baby dedication. We have a meeting after the 11 o'clock service in room 200 for that. And then next week, I'll tell you real quick, I'd love for you to come back. Obviously, next week, we're kicking off a brand new series called Overwhelmed. See how we did that? And so we'd love for you to be a part of next week. The next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking about how to overcome the feeling of being overwhelmed. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you right back here next Sunday, 9 or 11. See you soon. And thank you so much for watching online. We're really glad you decided to spend your weekend with us. Next week, as I said, we're kicking off a brand new series called Overwhelmed. We're talking about what it looks like to actually overcome that feeling of being overwhelmed. And a lot of us feel that all the time, especially if you have kids, if you have family, or even grandkids. Like, you know what it's like to feel overwhelmed in finances and relationships and those important areas of your life. So we're going to talk about that for the next 3 weeks. We'd love for you to join us here live in Traverse City, or you can watch online as well. Again, that's really a great place to discover what's going on here. Also, I want to let you know that we're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. That's really the best place to see all that's happening around here and what's going on. So we'd love for you to follow us on those places and even share some of that content. That's really a great way to get some of this out there. And most of us know someone who needs to hear the series. So we'd love for you to like and or share that content. Again, next week, kicking off Overwhelmed. We'd love to see you here, 9 or 11. See you soon.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Kensington Online. My name is Patrick, and we're so glad that you've decided to join us today. If it's your first time, I want to say a big welcome to you and let you know that we're going to be together today for a little bit over an hour. During that hour, you're going to hear some amazing music, a helpful message, and you're even going to have the opportunity to comment below and connect with the service host right here online. So we would love for you to do that. We're going to be sharing some of the main points from the message. You're going to get links to the songs and even some ways that you can reach out and connect with us if you'd like to do that. One of the ways that you can do that is actually going to thehubtc.com. That's thehubtc.com. If you can fill out that form, what will happen is one of our staff members will connect with you and answer any questions that you have about your experience today or even about our church. I also want to invite you to follow us on social media if you're not currently doing that. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and those are really the best ways to find out more about who we are and all that's going on around here, and even be able to see a behind-the-scenes glimpse and how it all happened. So we would love to connect with you on one of those social media networks. Well, I think we're about to get started. Again, we're so excited that you decided to join us today, and we'll see you right back here in just a few minutes.
Falling, when fear is coming, still you're calling me. Let's stand and sing together. When faith is lost and my hope exhausted, you will be my strength. When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. Yeah, I've decided I am not giving up. You won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on. You won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo. Your love is holding on. You won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo.
right. Thank you. That was awesome. Wasn't that amazing? Well, welcome to Kensington Church. My name is Betty Dickinson. I serve on the teaching team here, and we're so glad that you're with us as we continue in our series called Indivisible, where we tackle hard topics like faith and politics, but in a way that might be a little different than what you're seeing on your social media feed. And let me tell you, Patrick's message earlier, you guys are in for a treat. It is profoundly transformative. I know it's been challenging for me personally. But if you're here and you're here for the first time, we just want to welcome you and say we're so glad you're here. We're so glad that you chose to spend your weekend with us. And especially if you are new, we want to let you know we hope this is an environment that's a safe place for you to explore your faith. And we have an environment just for you out in the lobby called The Hub. There's a big orange sign called The Hub. We would love for you to check that out. Ask any questions that you may have about our church, and we'll help you get to know you better and answer your questions. But if visiting a table out in the lobby isn't quite your speed, we also have an online environment called thehubtc.com, and you can log in there, ask your questions, and one of our staff will get back with you as soon as we can. Now, with that said, we had Halloween this last week, and so I want you to turn to the person next to you and ask, what was your favorite Halloween costume you saw this past week? For me, I had a series of kids that showed up to my house like fresh fruit, and their costumes were like this big. So turn to the person next to you and ask them that question. Welcome to Kensington.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick, and I just wanted to say thanks again for watching our service today online and being a part of this community. Now, we know that you might have some questions as you watch the service today and want to find out a little bit more information about who we are. And so we created an environment for you to do just that. Simply go to startingpoint.today. That's startingpoint.today, and fill out that short form, and one of our staff members will reach out to you very shortly and answer any questions that you have about our church and about who we are. Again, thanks so much for watching. We'll be back at the end of the service today to give you a little bit more information, but we'll see you here in just a few minutes.
Well, what's up, everybody? My name is Ryan. This is Carrie. This is Mike. We're going to sing a song called Grace Like a Wave. Obviously, it talks about grace, but we all need it, right? Let's sing. Come on. I know you got more energy than that. Come on. Take all I have in these hands and multiply, God, all that I am, and find my heart on the altar again. Set me on fire, set me on fire. Sing that again. Take all I have in these hands and multiply, God, all that I am, and find my heart on the altar again. Set me on fire, set me on fire. Here I am, God, arms wide open. Come on, let's make this our prayer. Pouring out my life, gracefully broken. My heart stands in awe of your name. Your mighty love stands strong to the end. You will fulfill your purpose for me. You won't forsake me. You will be with me. Sing it out. Here I am, arms wide open. Here I am, pouring out my life, gracefully broken. Here I am, arms wide open, pouring out my life, gracefully broken. All to Jesus now, all to Jesus now, holding nothing back. We're holding nothing back, 'cause I surrender. Oh, I surrender. Yes, I surrender. I surrender. Here I am, arms wide open. Here I am, here I am. Pouring out my life, gracefully Here I am, arms wide open. Pouring out my life, gracefully
Your power at work in me. I'm broken gracefully. I'm strong when I am weak. I will be free. Your power at work in me. I'm broken gracefully. I'm strong when I am weak. I will be free.
Your power at work in me. I'm broken gracefully. I'm strong when I am weak. I will be free. Your power at work in me.
God's gonna work in
I'm
me.
broken gracefully.
I'm strong. Oh yes, I will be free.
Your power at work in me.
I'm broken gracefully.
I'm strong when I'm weak. I will be free. Your power at work in me. I'm broken gracefully. I'm strong when I'm strong. I will be free.
I'm telling you, I'll be free. We'll be free.
Here I am, God, sing it out. God, arms wide open.
do real quick if we can. Sorry. Hey, Carrie, come here real fast. Carrie, can you guys give it up for Carrie? I'm going to embarrass her. I just, 9 o'clock. See, I did this at 9, and you saw how fast she ran that way this time, right? So it was great. I want to say this, and if you're new, I know it probably feels kind of odd because you don't know us, but when Carrie sings, she just sings with such passion because she believes it and she lives it. Isn't that an amazing thing? Like when you watch her and she sings this, and this part of the song that I love so much, it talks about when I am weak, and it talks about strength that comes with the acknowledgement of your weakness. And when Carrie sings it, I'm just on the front row like, all right, I'm not cool. You're cool when you do it. I'm not. And I just want to say thank you so much for singing and thank you for leading us so well. You guys give it up for Carrie one more time. So good. Love you to death. So good. So today, part of that I really want to harp on, we're going to pray here in just a second, but when it talks about like the weakness that we find, if you're here and you haven't been to church in a long time, or if you've never been to church before and you don't know what you think about God or all those kinds of things, we believe kind of at the foundational level that we're all broken people and we're all weak, but we believe on the other side of that weakness is a God who loves us and has been pursuing us. And so when we talk about politics, which if you didn't know we're talking about that today, surprise. What I want to do for a minute is before we even jump into the content, I just want to pray about that, and that we would find a way to like crack open the doors of our hearts and just both acknowledge our weakness and then experience the grace that's on the other side of that. So let me pray for us, and we'll have a seat after that. Father, thank you so much for illuminating in us what we've already discovered in a lot of ways, and that's that all of us are broken people, whether we're followers of you or not, no matter what we believe about you, no matter where we are on the age spectrum, political spectrum, no matter where we are in any spectrum, God, we know that we're broken people in need of something bigger than us to pull us out. And so, Father, I pray that today, as we talk about something that in some ways feels divisive, in some ways is difficult, God, I pray that we would at least just launch from the place of understanding that we're all broken people and that we're all in this together. So in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thanks so much for singing with us. You can go ahead and have a seat. I should introduce myself. Sorry, my name is Patrick, and I'm the lead pastor here, and we're so glad that you decided to hang out with us. And if it's your first time here, again, we want to say a big shout out to you for getting up, especially on a weekend where do we gain an hour? We got more sleep last night, is that right? Which is great if you don't have kids. Because, your kids still woke you up rather than at 6 o'clock this morning. They woke you up at 5 o'clock, and then that's just not very fun. So anyway, thanks so much for being here today. And yeah, we're excited. So if it's your first time, one thing that we'd love to just invite you to do, if you're willing to, there's a card in the seat in front of you. And what I'd love for you to do is I'd love for you to pull out that card. And if you're new or if you're like, I want to take a step and get connected with somebody, I'd love for you to take out that card. And on that card is a couple things that I want to highlight. We just ask for your name, email, and a phone number. We're not going to bombard you. We're not going to spam you, any of those things. But we really wanted to just reach out to you and answer any questions that you have about our church, and also just kind of let you know of some next steps that you can take here to get connected and more involved if you'd like to. And then what I love, we literally just started this last week, is we used to give everybody that was first time like a mug, right? Because, every church gives you a little thing. And it had our logo on it and all that, which is great, and we love that. But we just assume that you already have a favorite coffee mug, right? I mean, you already have one. I already have one. Everybody has one. And one with our logo on it doesn't really make your life, I don't think, a lot better. So what we decided to do is take all that money, and we're actually dumping all that money into one of our local school partnerships here in town. So when you're here, fill out a card. We're so glad you're here. You're not going to get a gift. But what we're doing is we're actually taking that money that we would have used to give you a gift and make our city better. So that's just kind of us. So we would love to do that. But on your card, if you would, at the bottom, if you fill out your name, there's a note. It says note for a teacher. So here's what we would ask you to do is in December, we're actually going to Traverse Heights Elementary, which is a school that we partner with. And we want to just bombard these teachers with letters about how thankful we are for them and what they do. And so as you fill out your card, if you want to, we'd love to invite you just to write a note to a teacher on there and kind of let them know how appreciative you are of them. The other thing I want to let you know about is today what we're going to do is we're getting into that season of where, coming up in December, you got Thanksgiving coming up, you got Christmas, and it's going to go super fast. And we also go into that time where we talk about year-end giving, which is a big deal around here. In fact, some of you may know this, some of you may not, but a significant portion of our giving actually comes in the last 6 weeks of the year. How crazy is that? And which is an amazing thing. And the other thing that we also know is that you're bombarded with everybody asking for your money in November and December. So we also understand that too. But we just believe here that when you're thinking about like where to give and where, considering what you're going to do with year-end gift, that we just think think what we're doing all over the world and locally here in Traverse City is extraordinarily important. And so what we wanted to do today is we've captured a story, and if you give at Kensington at all, you're actually already contributing to this story, which is an amazing thing. But this story is actually happening on the other side of the world. It's about a guy named Nicodemus who is in South Sudan. And most of you will never meet Nicodemus, but when you give here, you're actually giving to what's helping him in some ways move to the place that he did. And so we're going to share the story with you. I'm going to come back here in just a second. But I'd love for you to watch this video and hear a little bit of his story. Let's watch this together.
Has there ever been a time in history where we are more immediately inundated with news that tends to bring us to despair or to give up hope? Do you realize that when you invest in a year-end Christmas gift at Kensington, that the opposite is true? That you're actually seeing hope and joy and love and peace come to the world? We're seeing that in so many countries in the world, explosive church planting movements. And probably none is more amazing or more miraculous than what is happening in the new country of South Sudan. Ruben Mariakal, our partner, and his friends in South Sudan are putting their life on the line each day. They literally don't know from day to day if they're going to live or die. But in the midst of this, overwhelming peace is coming to the world. And so today, as you watch this amazing story of this unlikely hero, a man named Nicodemus, realize that you and I get to be a part of something that is so unlikely and so amazing. When you give, we get to be a part of what Jesus Christ is doing in the world.
In my country, peace is rare. People are so used to fighting that many have given up hope that things can change. But God says, blessed are the peacemakers. And sometimes those that bring peace are the ones that no one expects.
I'm in South Sudan, the newest country in the world, and it's located in East Central Africa. And this whole region has been in conflict and ravaged by war in the past 60 years. And actually, it's not getting better, it's getting a whole lot worse. In fact, the compound that we're staying in just a few weeks ago had a bunch of rebels that had come through with guns and threatening violence, and everyone there just did not know what was going to happen. Fueled by racism, political strife, religious persecution, the price of the conflict has been very high. There's actual active landmines just a few feet away from where children are playing. Everyone here lives in a state of uncertainty, not knowing what tomorrow will hold. They all live in fear and long for peace.
When you see a man having marks on the head or the shoulder, that one means the number of the people that a person has killed during the war. And then when you see the women, you see some women are having marks. That one also shows the husband of the woman has killed many men. They share that glory in the name of husband. So she acts like the husband is an hero. My testimony is about my sister's son. the child grew at my home for more than 10 years. When he was making the 12th year, the child was taken back to the village. He was transferred to a cattle camp. When he reached the cattle camp, they went to the field where the cows are grazing. Then another tribe that used to attack the Toposa tribe called Boya came and raided the cows. And then on the process of raiding, the child was caught by a group of more than 10 men. They used a knife, then they slaughtered the boy. The people took me there using a motorbike to the place where the child was killed. So I went and I saw the body of the child lying on the ground. One hand was cut, then the other hand also was cut. The leg was cut. The head is far away from the body. I was not happy. I became very hungry. So I buried the boy, and then I came back to the village. So I wanted to take one gun to follow the men where they have gone. My aim was to go and clear them all. As you see this mark on my face, these 3 men have killed 3 people, and I was used to it. What was in my body, in my heart, was only to have a revenge. I was only aiming for a revenge. Then one gun which was left in the village was hidden somewhere because they knew that I loved the boy, and my aim was, if I am to get a gun, I was going to clear even 50 men in that place. So I grew very annoyed, in which I was even almost to hang myself when the people went and hide the gun. The only way was to go and hang myself, but the people went and advised me.
Tormented by the death of his nephew and unable to find his gun, Nicodemus reached a level of despair that led him into considering taking his own life. It was while searching for a weapon in a nearby village that he ran into Reuben Miracle, who would eventually become his mentor and spiritual advisor.
The life that Nicodemus had before getting Christ, his aim was to be the hero of the village. And being a hero is to raid as many tribes, the surrounding tribes as possible, is to kill as many people as possible. But once he encountered Christ, there was a radical change in his heart.
Other people went and advised me until they brought me back to Kopweta here, whereby I met with Pastor Reuben, and then with other believers. They had to advise me and say, that's not the way. Try to have peace in your heart. So I went and I stayed for more than 20 days until I forgive those people. Christ replaced this problem in me. I had to have peace again. As I am now, I'm going always to the church. I am also advising others who have the same grievances like the way I used to have.
So I see Nicodemus, and he no longer views the other tribes as enemies. He views them as objects of the grace of Christ, and they're candidates of heaven. And that's why he has now the desire to reach out to the other villages as his friends.
Since his encounter with Jesus, Nicodemus has been radically transformed. Under Reuben's guidance, he now plants churches in the very fields where the Toposa, Dinga, and other neighboring tribes have violently clashed for centuries. Armed with nothing more than the gospel and a motorcycle, he brings peace to a region that many believed impossible to reach.
So we have 2 communities in our location here. So we have the Dinga community and then the Toposa community. These 2 communities are very hostile to each other. So when we planted the church here, the Toposa and the Dinga were able to meet together. So what they did, they have to reconcile. Those who accepted Christ, they were able to meet together, and then they worship together, they became one. But in other areas whereby the church is not planted, the war still continues. Many blood is being shedded every time. But we saw really a church can bring peace in a community.
The mission of our ministry is letting the light occupy the land. And we see darkness manifesting itself in different forms. The greatest is spiritual darkness. There is intellectual darkness. There is darkness of hatred and violence. There is socio-economic darkness. And we see, as we are in this land, our ministry is to become hands and feet of Jesus and shine the light and let the light occupy the land. I see Nicodemus maybe finding his fellow warriors in the other village as friends. Even his friends who are raiders, they were 10 in number. His gang of 10 men, and 6 of them he has evangelized and they have come to Christ. When all these guys who are warriors come, they are now warriors for Christ. They are not taking the spears and guns, they are taking the gospel to the next tribes. I see this hope, and I can see changes will be here in years to come.
Jesus means everything to me. In the first place, I was lost. I was a sinner. I was a killer. I was robbing. I used to do many things which are not right. But when Christ came into my heart, I have now hope of being with the Lord.
I think when Christ is taken out of the equation, there's no hope in this country. I mean, governments can come with policies, but that cannot transform the hearts of people. It takes only the power of Christ to transform the hearts of people. If it's just empty philanthropy, helping people and doing that, there could never be hope. But when we are preaching Christ, who is the Prince of Peace, I'm sure ultimately the Prince of Peace will be able to bring peace to this country, so there is hope.
Isn't that a powerful story? If you call Kensington home, if you volunteer here, if you give here, if you show up and you're part of this place, what's amazing about it is that you're part of what we do here in Traverse City, but you're part of what we do globally as well. And that story that you just heard, the stories that you're going to hear over the coming weeks, those stories are part of your story, right? When you give, you are making a lot of those things happen and making those things possible. And the line that he said that I think stood out so much to me, he talked about how the Prince of Peace could bring peace to that side of the world. And so here, even though you may never meet some people on that side of the world, hopefully you do, you get to be a part of bringing peace over there. So I want to go invite our ushers to move forward. We're going to receive our offering today. And I do want to say this to those of you who are considering a year-end gift and trying to figure out like what to do with that. And even those of you who may not be, call Kensington home and you're like, you know what? I know that I need to figure out the generosity thing. What we would say is, we hope that you give here. We think it's a great place to be a part of. But even if you don't, we think that you should give somewhere. It just does something to your heart and it kind of frees it in a way that there's really nothing else like it that can. But we would love for you to be a part of of that. And as you consider that, again, Kensington, we think is an amazing place for you to be able to give a year-end gift. And there's a couple ways that you can do that. You can give on our website at kensingtonchurch.org/giving. That's a great way to do it. You can always give on the app. That really takes less than 30 seconds to set up. And once it's set up, you're good to move forward from there. It's super simple. Or you can always text it. You can text Kensington to 77977 and it'll be a part of giving that way. My wife and I, we do it right there on the app. It's kind of the easiest way for us. But we would love to invite you in as you consider your year-end gift to be able to do it in one of those ways. Hey, I wanted to let you know of a couple other things that are directly here in Traverse City as well. We are doing our Thanksgiving baskets. We partner with Traverse Heights Elementary School here in town, and we really try to focus in specifically on that school. And so every year we do a thing with this Thanksgiving baskets where we ask you to give maybe $50. I think it's $50 to do one of these baskets, and it puts a bunch of food together, a bunch of things that a family would need here in town to be able to experience the Thanksgiving that maybe we would in the way that we would eat that. And so we ask you to do that, and then what we do on November 17th is we all come together on a Saturday morning, and then we pack these Thanksgiving baskets and go out into the community and hand these out all over our city. And so last year we did a bunch of them. So many of you were a part of this, but we'd love to invite everybody to be a part of that day. And especially if you have kids, this is one of my favorite things that we do, especially for kids. When you talk about generosity, you talk about giving into the community, this is just a practical and tangible way that they can see that and see you do that. So we would love to invite you to be a part of that. And the other thing I was going to let you know about is we have Render coming up on November 14th. How many of you ever been to Render? Anybody ever? Yeah, you've been to Render, which is so much fun for us. It's at 7 p.m. It's right here at our church. So if you love the weekends, but you're like, I would love to meet more people, Render's a great way to do that. We do communion together. We do a lot of music. And then I always say my message is shorter. I don't think it actually ever is, but we always, I don't know why, we say that. I pretty much lie to you. So it's great. Just kidding. So we would love for you to be a part of Render. It's a fun night. We would love for you to be a part of that coming up. Now, as I said earlier, today we are wrapping up a series called Indivisible. And I'll be really honest with you. This series in particular, I wanted to go like 12 weeks long, but I was the only person who thought that was a good idea. And so people are like, you probably shouldn't talk about politics for that long. So we made it a 2-week series. And for us, today what we're going to do is going to be a little bit different. And so if you're a church person and you're visiting, you're like, it's probably not going to feel like your typical church service. It probably hasn't already. But the message will feel a little bit different as well. And then if you're somebody who's like coming back to church or at least considering that or kind of thinking about that, today I feel like we're going to be able to give a voice to some things that you felt in the past. And to do that, we're going to kick off with a song with one of my favorite artists. It's a guy named John Mayer. Any of you John Mayer fans out there other than me? Yes. If you like guitar, then you probably like John Mayer. Yeah, I'm a big fan. And so he wrote a song years ago called Waiting on the World to Change. And I love this song. It's such an interesting song because it really does give a voice to what so many people have felt for a long time. But specifically right now with an election coming up, a lot of us feel this way. And so we're going to take that as a launching pad into where we go. I'd love for you to pay attention to the lyrics and the amazing guitar solo that Mike Hunter is going to do. So I just put a lot of pressure on him. So there you go. Isn't that guitar amazing as well, by the way? It's pretty great. So, Waiting on the World to Change. Here you go.
Me and all my friends, we're all misunderstood. They say we stand for nothing, there's no way we ever could. Now we're seeing everything that's going wrong with the world and those who lead it. We just feel we don't have the means to rise above and beat it. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. It's hard to beat the system when we're standing at a distance. We keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. Now if we had the power to bring our neighbors home from war, they would have never missed a Christmas. No more ribbons on their door. And when you trust your television, what you get is what you got. Cause when the only information, they can bend it all they want. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. It's not that we don't care, we just know that the fight ain't fair. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. One day a generation is gonna rule the population. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. Waiting on the world to change. Waiting on the world to change. Waiting on the world to change.
I love that you could not feel more tense after that video, right? Like, as soon as you see that, half the people in the room got a little upset, and then the other half got upset. It's fun. And I'll say this, I love this series that we've been doing because a lot of you have invited people, and if you're here for the first time and, you're kind of hanging out, just so you know, if you feel uncomfortable, you don't feel near as uncomfortable as the person that invited you. In fact, they probably texted me this morning and said, please don't suck today. Like, that's probably what they're thinking. So it's going to be a fun morning. I will tell you this, and this is a little bit of what I was saying a few minutes ago. Today is going to feel a little bit different than the typical talk that you may have heard us do in the past. One of the things that I love is I love just kind of hanging out in one passage and unpacking that, which is also something we get dinged for a lot. They're like, you don't use enough scripture. And I'm like, I think I used like 30 verses, but it was just one place, right? So we don't skip around the Bible a lot. I like for you to go kind of deep into one passage. But today what we're going to do is we are going to bounce around just a little bit, because I think it's important as we talk about this topic to get a little bit broader picture of what the New Testament talks about in this. And the other thing that I would tell you is most of the time what we do is we try to highlight a tension that everybody in the room feels. The fun part about today is everybody already feels tension. So this is great. I don't have to even highlight that. You already feel a little bit nervous, a little bit angsty, and you're wondering right now if you should walk out. So because of that, we can acknowledge one thing that's true of all of us right now, and I think this is true of us in the room, and this is probably true of us in our city, in our country, all these things, is that we are in an area or a time where I just feel like we're very polarized. Like, there's this polarization of our country on one side or the other, Democrat, Republican. And then the New York Times actually just published an article, which I thought was so fascinating, specifically on young, millennial evangelicals. And they started talking about how there's also a whole group of people who don't fall into either one of those camps. In fact, that they would kind of pick and choose from, different parts of this. And they almost feel, as we'll talk about a little bit later, like politically homeless. Like, they just don't feel like they fall in either camp. And when that happens, there's something that just kind of happens inside of us. Like, we just don't know what to do. And so last week I did something that was a little bit bold, and I love, those of you who got nervous about this, and, I get it. As I asked everybody in our church to take 1 week and not talk about politics with other people, not put it on Facebook, try to stay away from it at the office. And I said, this week we're going to unleash you to talk about politics. So if you just give me 1 week of not talking about it, this week what we were going to do is talk a little bit about how to talk about it. And so last week what we did is we focused on you, right? I said, the reason I don't want you to talk about it for a week is I want you to look inward and focus on you and your own posture and your own heart around these things. And we really came up with three points of the posture that we wanted you to focus specifically on. The first one was on mind your rhetoric, right? Like, you need to think about the things that you're saying, but not just think about the things that you're saying. Think about how the things that you say affect the people around you. We want you to mind your rhetoric. And I actually, from this point alone, we got several emails back, which I love. I love emails around this. And I have a close friend, and she used to be on staff, and she actually emailed me around this, and I got it late last night. I thought it was so good. And she had this internal tension that I think I feel and a lot of you feel, so we'll address it right off the bat. She said, if you ask Christians to mind their rhetoric, what happens if they become silent? And I was like, that's a great question. And I didn't tell her that at the end of it. I told everybody to be silent for a week. But that's kind of the thing. And for us, I think that's a great thing. So just so you hear me today, I am not telling you to be silent. In fact, what we're going to talk about really throughout most of the day is I want to tell you that you should speak up, and how do we speak up in the right way. But minding your rhetoric was, how do we focus on what do we say and how it affects other people. The second thing is, I said I would love for us all to embrace guilt by association, which means that I want you to have relationships with people who are very different than you and be okay if someone thought that you were a part of the other party, even if that was like a thing for you. Like I said last week that some of you, your greatest fear is that somebody might think that you're a Democrat or a Republican. And if that's one of your greatest fears, let's just solve that and say being misunderstood in that way is actually a positive thing because you are growing so much from seeing the perspective of other people. And the last one, and this was really the pinnacle of what we talked about, was how do we elevate the dignity of those whose position you most adamantly oppose, right? How do we elevate the dignity of those people and not make them an enemy, but embrace our humanity together so that we can move forward in the right way? Now, what I want to talk about today, having said all of that, is really focused in a little bit different direction, and is focused on a word that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about, which, if you're a follower of Jesus, is a word that you should probably have a fair amount of conflict with, and the word is civility, right? Now, when we hear the word civility, especially for those of us who grew up in church, depending on the view of Jesus that you were handed, some of you were handed a view of Jesus where he was really nice. He had amazing hair, you know what I mean? Like he used all the best hair products. He was a middle-aged white guy and he was just holding a lamb, right? Like that was kind of like the view of Jesus. Very soft, never got in a fight, super happy all the time. And then others of you, right, you were handed a version of Jesus where he was like, like malicious and he got after it and he called them, out and all these kinds of things. And civility is interesting for those of us who are followers of Jesus because it does focus on something when it comes to Jesus that sometimes is difficult to discern from Scripture. And so I've been reading a book by Brene Brown that I would love for all of you to read. We're actually going to post it online so that you can see where to get it. But it's such a good book. And she has this definition of civility that she had found from the Institute for Civility in Government. So here's the definition. It says, civility is claiming and caring for one's identity, needs, and beliefs without degrading someone else's in the process. Isn't that good? Let me say it one more time. Civility is, and can we say this together? Civility is claiming and caring, right? It's claiming and caring, which means this, that there's something in you that acknowledges that someone else has a different worldview or perspective than you have, and that you might have a different perspective and worldview than they have, and you just claim like, hey, that just is. That is true. And then the other part of civility, acknowledge what is, and then what it does on top of that is it says, I'm going to choose to care for your worldview. That I'm going to lean into that. I'm going to choose to care for your identity, the needs, and your beliefs without ever degrading you or dehumanizing you in the process. It doesn't mean that you don't speak up. It doesn't mean that you don't talk. It doesn't even mean that you don't have hard conversations. But it means that you are working to protect the other person and protect you throughout. Now, what's hard about this for me, and for years I struggled through this, is I would read through the New Testament, and there's moments where Jesus says things that feel uncomfortable, right? So this is Jesus. He says this. He says, he replied, Isaiah was right when he prophesied, and can we say this together? But you gotta say it like, you're like, whoa, you gotta be like ready for this. Can we say this together? Right? Isaiah was right when he prophesied about, like he got into it, at least in my head. Like he was ready to throw down. He calls them out and says, you hypocrites. And it is written, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. And all the people who were, conflict avoidance at this time period just started slowly walking away, Like Jesus is calling out religious leaders. He's calling out people that are approaching it in his view the wrong way. And then he does this, and this is one of my favorite passages of Scripture. This is John chapter 2. It says, so he made a whip out of cords. And here's the amazing part of this. In the Greek, it means whip out of cords, right? It means that. He said he makes a whip out of it. And he goes into the temple, and he drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle, and he scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. Jesus lost his crap. Like, it's amazing. Like, he walks in, and theologically, don't email me about that, but you get it, right? Like, it feels like if you're an observer to this, he, gets after it, and everybody, puberty, he gets after it, right? Like, he's going for it. And everybody feels a little bit uncomfortable. Like, how does this work? And the questions they ask on the other side of it, I love. It's like, under whose authority do you think you can come into the temple and start messing things up? And he's like, God's. And then they killed him. Right? He goes on. I love this. He says this. He looked around at them in anger. He looked at them in anger. He was angry. What was he? Angry. And then deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. Right? I love that. Like he gets angry at people. And then there's this one. This is my favorite. Like, I don't think it's really a cuss word, but it's super strong language. He says, "You brood of vipers." Now, you don't talk like that, right? You would never look at your wife and compare her to a viper because you like living and she would kill you, right? Like, you know this. But when Jesus says, "You brood of vipers," like, he's getting after it. You brood of vipers. How can you who are evil say anything good? For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Like, it feels like Jesus is a little bit like your crazy uncle on Facebook, right? Like, he's tweet, you know? And you look at this, and this picture of this soft, kind, lamb-cuddling Jesus goes away. But this is the same Jesus, and this is the part that's difficult to reconcile, who, as we looked at last week, says, "But blessed are the," what's that word? Peacemakers, not peacekeepers, peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Now, when it comes to Jesus, and when we look at the tension that he holds, he's calling out religious leaders left and right. He's calling out the way things are and the way that they shouldn't be, and he's speaking truth to power, and he's in some ways subverting religious and political structures all over the place. I don't think the New Testament and or Jesus outlines a scenario where Christians should be silent. And I don't think he outlines a scenario where people who are not Christians should be silent. In fact, we could say it this way, especially those of us who are followers of Jesus, we should not be silent on issues that matter. But the problem that I feel, right, and this, again, for the next few minutes, we're just talking, this is straight out of my journal for the last year, right? What I feel is I either don't feel informed enough, intelligent enough, or together enough to speak on certain things. Or when I'm in a conversation with somebody and it gets tense and I feel small, right, or I feel vulnerable in any way, I immediately go for the jugular in the argument. You know what I'm talking about? Anybody else do that sometimes? Like, you're ready, like, especially in a fight with your wife, you know which button to push to win, right? And you never actually win, but you know what that button is. And when it comes to political arguments, some of you do this at work. Some of you do this around the Thanksgiving dinner table. Now, what I'm going to do for the next couple of minutes is I just want to acknowledge this. Some of you are on the fringe on either side of this, right? You're on, what I'm going to say today, you're not going to agree with at all, and that's okay. I totally get it. You're going to like forcefully push forward and like, which is great. Some of you are passive on the other end of this spectrum, and you're just like, there's no way I'm having this hard conversation. And then I think there's the vast majority of us who are in the middle, I think, that are at least trying to figure out how do we talk about it at least a little bit, right? And so I want to say this, because if you're on the fringe, this isn't your goal, but I think this should be our goal. And the goal, ultimately, is influence, right? Now, here's what I mean by that, and here's why this is so important. The people in your life, at least on the fringes, who are like forcefully coming at you with everything they got, and it's gun blazing, and it's, even if they're right, they're not changing your mind, right? And even if they have all the answers, you're just sitting there going, I just don't like you, right? And even if they're like, just forcefully doing it. And again, I think there's probably space in our culture for people that are on the fringes. I do. I think sometimes that can be a good thing, but I'm just saying this. For the vast majority of us, the end goal is how do we influence together in a way that moves it forward? How do we influence in a way where every conversation doesn't end with well, your mama? Like, how do we influence in a way where every conversation doesn't feel like you just burned the whole relational house down? And so to answer that, at least for me, what I want to do is I'm going to talk for a few minutes around 3 questions that I ask myself. So these aren't like pretty, preacher statement thing. These aren't like, you're going to look at these, and they're super simple questions that are super difficult to apply. But what I think, and this is what I'm going to tell you, this is what I'm working at doing. I'm not perfect at it at all, but this is what I'm working at doing, and this is what I hope that all of us work towards, especially in a political climate that feels like it's so divisive all the time. First question is this, and this is one of the more difficult ones of the 3, so we'll just kick off with that. What am I actually doing? Like, in light of everything that's going on, in light of everything I agree with, disagree with, and all of those things, what am I doing? And really, the preface for this that I literally wrote down was, what am I actually doing? Because you're a good person. We all know you're a good person, right? You don't do a lot of bad stuff. Like, you're a good person. You're well-intended, right? And in your mind, you've convinced yourself that you're doing things. But here's the question, tangibly, what are you doing? Like tangibly, how are you leaning in? Tangibly, do you have an actual answer for what this looks like? Now, I said this earlier. There's a lot of people that feel in this like political homeless state. Like I don't fully agree on red. I don't fully agree on blue. I kind of pick and choose. Like, there's parts of this that I like, parts of this that I don't. And what this oftentimes does, and I would say I struggle with this at times too, is this feel often causes us to say, I'm going to continue to think about it and wrestle it down before I ever do anything. And in our mind, we assume that we're doing things, but we don't actually do anything. And for me, and this is, you're a better person than me, you probably don't do this, I can sit and think for a long time, months, years, decades, trying to figure something out before I actually ever get engaged and get involved. And so for me, in terms of a guardrail, there's 3 commitments under this question that I really wanted to focus on. And the first one I think is probably the hardest thing that we'll say all day. And that's this. That I have to accept personal responsibility for the world that I feel like I'm called to create. Let me say it one more time. That I have to accept personal responsibility for the world, and I feel like we do. We're called to create. And what that means is this, right? If there's something that you don't like, saying, I can't control it is never the answer. Because there are areas of your life that you can't. For those of you who are parents, right? You get to create the family that you think the world should emulate. You get to create the marriage that you feel like other people should emulate. You get to be involved in your school. You get to be involved in your work. You get to be involved in these conversations. You get to be involved publicly. You get to be involved in all these kinds of things. But the idea that you don't have control is the first step in acknowledging, right? Or the first step in moving forward and going, whether I have control over all of these things or not, what I do have control over, I will be fully engaged with. Because we can talk ourselves out of action all day long. And we can talk ourselves out of moving forward all day long. But you and I have to accept personal responsibility for the world that we're called to create. Which means that if you don't like something that's happening in the education system, you can complain about it all day, you can yell at it all day, you can post about it all day. But if you're not willing to get involved and being a part of it, then yelling and complaining just kind of puts you on the fringe. What would it look like? Come on. If every person who had a problem with accepted their own personal responsibility for. Second one is this. This one's hard, right? I think you have to speak with conviction, passion, and informed thoughts, right? So real quick, now you're in church, so you can't lie for a second, right? Where are all of my like introverts in the room? Right, I'm an introvert too, so raise your hand. Everyone hates this. Introverts are like, why are you making me raise my hand in public? That's terrible, right? Introverts in the room, right? Now here's what I want to tell you, right? Here's the thing. This we like to believe in, we like to embrace, we're like, yeah, other people should, you go, and then I'll write about it, like that. I think we have to make this a discipline, especially if we're introverted, right? Especially if speaking up in these ways feels uncomfortable. And you need to speak with conviction, passion, and informed thought, which means this, that you don't need to speak about everything because you're not passionate and convicted about everything. Right? And when you pretend that you are, and here's the hard part, when you pretend that you're an expert on everything, or when you pretend that you're really passionate about everything, come on, you just end up talking about things that you really don't know anything about. But the things for you that have broken your heart, the things in your life that are problems that you want to be a part of solving, you need to speak deeply with conviction and passion and informed thought on those things. And the third one is this, and this is a guardrail that I've had for quite a while, and again, I'll probably say this every time I'm on stage, but you have to build relationships with people that are drastically different than you. Right? And I said this last week in a different way, but for those of us who are followers of Jesus, curiosity, Craig Lang said it this way, curiosity is really that cure for the animosity that we feel in our world. And if you're not building relationships with people on the other side of the aisle, people who see the world drastically different than you, come on. It's hard for you to fully get involved and have an informed opinion because you don't see it from other people's perspectives. Some of you that are in your 40s and 50s remember a time in your 20s when you were 100% certain that you were right about something until you met a person who was on the other side of that argument. And you met that person, and all of a sudden your belief shifted, not because you got more logical, but because you saw it through the eyes of another human. So the first question I want us to wrestle with is, what am I actually doing? The second one, and this is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time today, is this. How am I actually doing it? How do I actually get involved in this? How do I actually have conversations at the office or with family members or with other people? How am I actually doing it? And it begins with the place that we left off last week, and that's this, that I will elevate the dignity of every person because they bear the image of God, right? I will elevate the dignity of every person because they bear the image of God. That I won't fall into this petty stuff, but I will elevate the dignity of all people in my disagreements. And when we start there, then we can begin to build forward in what it looks like to disagree with civility. So I'm going to tell you, I told you about this Brene Brown book, which I love, but she has a section in there that just kind of ruined me. And a couple of these thoughts moving forward, I really wanted to figure out how to edit them well, and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out another way to say it. So we're not going to say this because we have kids in the room, and also because my mom's probably watching. But I want to give you a quick thing on this, and this is what we're going to talk about for the next couple of minutes. And that's this, right? We're going to talk about BS just for a second, right? Now, I'm trying to figure out a better way to say this. So today, for us, we're going to say full of it. Can we do that, right? So that's what we're going to say. So the grammar is not going to be perfect, but I think you're going to be able to track. In this book, she has a whole section on this, and I think it's so fascinating and so important that I'm going to read you the quote that came out of this, at least to kick off this particular chapter, and it says this. It says, someone who lies and someone who tells the truth are playing on opposite sides, so to speak, in the same game. Each responds to the facts as he understands them, although the response of the one who is guided by the authority of truth, while the response of the other defies the authority and refuses to meet its demands. I want to draw this for a second because I feel like it's better, because it lights up. It's fun. So, truth, right? There's this. And this is what we're going to be talking about, at least for the next couple minutes. And on either spectrum, there are people who speak truth. And then there's the other side of the spectrum, who are people that would lie about it, right? And so you have either one of these spectrums here. The thing that unites both sides of this, and this is so important because I think this is all of us. The thing that unites either side is truth. So the person who speaks truth acknowledges that truth exists and decides to live in that. To speak from truth, to speak from the center point. And the person who lies, which again is interesting, the person who lies acknowledges that there is truth and just chooses in some ways to reject it and move forward. And so the quote goes on and it says this, which I think highlights this so well. It says, so the person who is full of it, ignores these demands altogether. He does not reject the authority of the truth as the liar does and oppose himself to it. Now don't miss this. He pays no attention to it at all. And by virtue of this, I couldn't figure out grammatically how to do this. So BS is a greater enemy of the truth than lies are. Now this is why this is so important, and I want you to watch this just for a minute. You've got those that speak truth, you've got those who lie, but the person who is out here, and we'll say, full of it, doesn't acknowledge the truth at all. And so the conversation around this isn't a defiance of the truth that exists. It's a complete dismissal of, right? So we say it this way, right? Lying is a defiance of truth. This full of it idea is a complete dismissal of truth. Which means that when I am uninformed, and which means that when I speak overconfidently about the opinion that I have, and which means that when I kind of pull away from the center point of what truth actually is and develop my own thoughts around that and go, and don't miss this, I lose influence. Which is why you scroll through your Facebook feed and you see that article that gets posted by somebody, and then you look at what the actual URL is, and it's like pandas.chair.au-dolphins. And you're like, wow, that was amazing. Like, what is that? And you know that there's not facts behind what was shared. And you immediately go, I am dismissing this person. You lose influence. Now, this is where I am so passionate about this. Ready? Because every study that we've seen, especially over the last 10 years, has shown that the local church over and over again, has lost influence in culture and community. Now, part of that is because the local church, in some ways, this would be a fun tweet, has been full of it. That we haven't been informed, and we've been so, don't miss this, we've been so overconfident in some of the things that have been said. And we share it, we like it, this is right, this is true, this is da, 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 da. And everybody who's fact-checking goes, and they walk away. Now, this is why this is so important. You ready? Because if you're a follower of Jesus, the whole thing is based on truth. Jesus said, I am the way, and the life. Which means that followers of Jesus should be known as being rooted in truth. That people can criticize your politics, people can criticize the approach, people can criticize all these things. But if what you're saying isn't true, that if you get sucked into the spiral of leaning in, I don't miss this, and you get sucked into the spiral of saying things that aren't accurate, and you get sucked into the spiral of name calling and blaming and name calling, come on. What you lose is so significant and so important. You lose influence, and you float to the fringe of culture. Compromising with truth is always a compromise of influence. And here's where this hits me personally. You ready? Hopefully I'm not the only person in the room. This hits me personally because no matter what you ask me about, I have an opinion about it, right? Anybody else? Like, you can ask me just about anything, and I at least acknowledge that I have a thought on it. Is it informed? But I have a thought on it, and I have an opinion about it, and I think what I think about it, right? Now, come on, this is why it matters so much. Please don't miss this. If you're a follower of Jesus, and we base it on truth, and we tout that as the kind of the big, we believe truth, that sort of thing. When we knowingly engage in things that are not true and are full of it, the people that aren't followers of Jesus go, why in the world would I lean in to that? So, here's what I did, and again, it's taken me a long time to write this stuff down, and this is personal. This is not something that, I think we should all adopt it, but you probably have a different version of this for you. But what I did is I came up with 8 statements for me that I wanted to help guide my conversations with other people so that we don't find ourselves here. The first one is this: that in my conversations with people specifically who disagree with me politically, that I will give you the most generous benefit of the doubt that I can. That the starting place for us isn't me assuming on all of your intentions. The starting place for us is that I am going to actively choose to give you the benefit of the doubt, and even more and more generous than I probably feel like in the moment that I should. Now imagine just for a second, if every political conversation you had began with 2 people who came to the table and said, I'm going to believe the best about your intentions. All of a sudden it let so much of the air out of the balloon. 2 people begin to lean in to that. I will give you at the starting place the most generous benefit of the doubt that I can. Number 2 is this: that I will seek mutual intent and fight the bigger enemy. Can we say this together? With you. At the end of the day, it's not Republican, Democrat. It's not this aisle or this aisle. It's not red or blue. At the end of the day, there's a bigger enemy that we are fighting. That's anything that goes against the betterment of humanity. And together, what would it look like if I believed the best about you and then I sought out the things that unified us? In Brene Brown's book, I love this. Again, I think this particular chapter, I wish everybody could read. She says this. She starts a conversation about a really hot button issue, and they go back and forth, but she brings it back to this. She brings it back to going, what are the things that we actually agree on? We agree that we have the same fear about, and then she filled in the blank. And we agree that we have the same angst about, and you fill in the blank. And all of a sudden, don't miss this, you have 2 people believing the best about each other who are leaning in and now united around at least what the problem is and the bigger enemy is. And when you can posture and position yourself that way in a conversation, don't miss this, it is hard. It is hard to make an enemy out of someone who's looking at you and going, I believe the best about you, and we're working on something together. Number 3 is this: I will seek connection over conquering. And this one's tough, right? This is really tough because I like to win. right? My wife does not play Monopoly with me anymore. She just won't do it, right? I like to win. I'm that personality type. But every time you get into a political conversation, if your end goal is to win out on the other side of it, eventually you're going to lose influence because you're working on something together. I want to be so deeply connected to you that we are working on a problem and an issue together. Number 4 is one that I wish I could convince everybody on, Christian, non-Christian, that I will say I don't know if I don't know. Now, that seems so simple. You ready? It seems so simple. This is why it matters, though. You ready? Because if I don't know, I tend to feel small. I tend to feel vulnerable. I tend to feel like, oh, I don't know if this is okay. But come on. It is hard to make an enemy out of a person who looks at you and go, gosh, I hadn't thought about it like that before. I don't know. I want to think about it. No one responds with, yeah, but... It just ends, right? Now, here's why this matters, ready? Because it's not just about one conversation. It's about you together moving forward in a relationship. Solve the problem with influence. Number 5 is this, that I will prioritize reliability and accountability. This one's hard. That I will allow the other person on the other side of me to hold me accountable to the areas that I'm full of it. And that I will prioritize reliability. You don't have to be an expert on everything. You don't. But you, on the things that break your heart and that you want to be passionate about and move forward in, need to know as much as you can about both sides of that argument. Number 6 is this. This one's fun. I will speak truth and embrace it as a foundational starting place. Right? Now, real quick, I asked some of you to do this already. It may be some of the same people. Yay, but... How many of you, if you're honest, are conflict avoiders? Right? Just for a second, raise your hand. Keep it up just for a second so we can all know we're not together. Raise your hand, right? If you have a spouse that's not raising their hand, nudge them now. Go ahead. Keep your hand up just for a second, right? This is hard, right? Because you feel the weight of diving into a conflict with somebody else, right? And this is hard. But the world needs your voice in speaking up, and speaking truth, right? Now, real quick, this is the other side. How many of you are like me and you are just the opposite of whatever that was? Anybody? Raise your hand real quick. Like, you don't mind conflict. You dive in. Right? You don't have as many friends, but you get it. I'm just kidding, right? I'm just kidding. Raise your hand real quick. So here's what I need you to do just for a second. Everybody raise your hand. You're like this. I almost had you stand up, but that was, that'd have been fun. Keep your hand up. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to shut up. Right? And here's why. You ready? Here's why. No, watch me. Because we, me included, I can get so engaged in these conversations that by the end of it, I just realize I've been talking for 5 minutes. And they didn't talk at all, But I'm right, Here's what this means. I need you to still speak up. Now, don't miss this. But you have the unique capacity and you have the unique ability to create space for other people's voice to be heard. And we're gonna foundationally say that truth is the beginning point. But beyond that, right, we're going to create space for other people to speak up. Number 7 is this. I will be passionately honest. And honest and like this radical candor idea is so important. That I will not hide. I will not hide. That I will be honest about the things that matter and how I feel about it and what I think we need to do moving forward and be informed. That will be passionately honest. And the last one I think is the hardest one out of this set. And it's that I will be vulnerable. In fact, if this is just me, if I get everybody to do this one, I think the whole world would be a better place. And this is anti-everything that comes natural to me, right? Because it makes you feel, right? It can make you feel small. It can make you feel soft. It can make you feel like you're being trampled on. It can make you feel like you're wrong. It can make you feel like you're not intelligent enough. And it can make you feel like you're not smart enough. It can make you feel like all these kinds of things. And the truth of the matter is, if you're actually engaged in it, you ready? Then there will be a moment where you experience all of those things. But that's never an excuse not to lean in. And that's never an excuse for you not to be engaged and to be civil and to love other people and to put yourself out there. If everybody was vulnerable and was willing to risk in these conversations, and didn't prop themselves up on whatever the stuff we prop ourselves up on. Can you imagine how much progress that we can make together? And the last question that I have is one that's deeply connected to my heart. I'll tell you why in just a second. Third question is this: where's my hope? And the harder question underneath this that I had to literally write down for me was, would others know that by my posture in conversation? Now, I'll tell you this, and then we're about to wrap up, but I'm 30, right? I'm about to be 31. So I'm closer to some of your age than you think, right? Even though I'm mildly skinny jeans, right? I'm getting there. 31. And there are so many millennials in our country, right? And if you're 55 and older in the room, right? Like if we could just slice that off for a second. You've experienced times in our country that have been turbulent. And I'm 30, right? I get it. I'm 30. For me and a lot of my friends, right, we get this, come on. Sometimes I feel like the world's coming to an end. It's all going to fall apart. But you know this. You've seen our country move through difficult times. You've seen our country be divided. You've seen our country do extraordinarily terrible things in the name of politics, religion, race, immigration. You've seen our country do terrible, terrible things. And then you've seen, you've seen how on the other side of it we can move forward and take a step. And then it doesn't all happen at once, and it doesn't happen overnight. And then the whole gamut of this graph tends to go up and down and up, and there are good times and bad times. You see all of this. It doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on, you've seen this. And I'm just saying on behalf of all of my 30-something friends, right, and 20-something friends who are overly confident in our opinions because we've seen so much, What we need from you isn't hate rhetoric. Isn't that? I think our country, from people that are 55 and older, here's what we need from you. We need you to remind us of where we've been. And for those of you who are followers of Jesus, we need you to remind us that our hope isn't in House of Representatives, in the Senate, in local politics. It's not in who's president. It's not in all of the things that feel like it comes up and down and wherever side you agree on. We need you to remind us of the resiliency of our country. We need you to remind us of the power of God. Because our hope has not been and never will be in our form of government. Our hope is found in Jesus. Colossians chapter 1 says it like this: for in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. You ready? That on Tuesday, if you're the person who's like, or you're the person that's like, I'm going to need something stronger than that. Or you're the person going, I'm nervous or angsty. You're the person going, I'm excited. Whatever part of that aisle you fall in. What we all need is to find a place of being centered. And the centeredness comes from a hope that's beyond our government, politics, and all of those things. Even though you need to be fully engaged with it. Even though you need to be civil. But I think mostly we need to be centered. So for those of you who are 55 and older, you can look at your grandkids or your kids or whoever and go, you know what? The pastor who wore skinny jeans said that I can say, because we need to be reminded that over and over again. So this is, and I wrote this in my journal, this is what I'm feeling. It's what I hope for us as a church and for us as a country, is that all of us make the commitment to be fully engaged in politics, speak out, to be a part of it, to be civil, and to model what that actually looks like when people disagree. But mostly, that we find a way to be centered together. Okay, so here's what we're going to do to end our time together today. And I know it's, I got excited about my talk, so we went a little longer. But here's what I would say to us to wrap up our time. 9 months ago, when I first decided that we were going to at least talk about this in some way. I started writing some of this down. It was a song that I first started hearing, and I heard the song, and I remember thinking the reason that I care about this song is because I think it should be a prayer for people who are followers of Jesus. Right? It's not about singing a song, even though it's great and the band's good, but it's a prayer, almost like for us a liturgy towards leaning in to believe what we believe about Jesus and what he can do in our lives. And so today, the way that we're going to wrap up days before the election is to, what I would invite us to do, and what I hope we do, is to stand and sing this song out. The song's called Living Hope, and what it does is it paints a picture of what I believe, what we get to place our hope in, and where we get to find our centeredness, and where we get to posture everything else that we're talking about over these last couple of weeks. So I want to invite you to stand up. I'm going to pray for us real quick, and then we're going to sing this song. Now, I do this pretty frequently because I think it matters. But for those of you in the room who are terrible, just really awful singers, can I see your hand real quick? Like, you're really bad. Great. That's most of us in the room. All of you who are good singers, they stopped raising their hands because they knew I kept calling them out. That's great. Right? Right. What I would love for us to do is, if you're a follower of Jesus for the next few minutes, I'm going to ask you to sing this song out. But not just as a song and not just to sing it. I'm going to ask you to sing it as a prayer. And if you're not a follower of Jesus for these next couple of minutes, what I would really love for you to do, because again, it's like a couple of minutes long and then we're going to be done, but I'd love for you to look at these lyrics, because really above everything else that we've talked about today, this gives us the most perfect glimpse of what we believe about God and what we believe about Jesus, what we believe about you and how you live in this world. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pray for us, and we're going to sing this song together, and then we'll wrap up. Father, thank you for these truths. As we said earlier in the day, God, you meet us in our weakness. And I would say when it comes to politics, the vast majority of us in the room, including me, would say that we feel weak in having these conversations. We feel weak in trying to make progress. We feel weak in trying to move forward. But God, you've never called us to really be silent on that. You've called us to fully engage with our culture and fully engage with the world that we live in and make it a better place. And God, you are resurrecting things around us. You've called us to be people who go into the world and bring the same resurrection and redemption in their hearts and lives, people. And so, Father, I pray specifically in this area for the person in the room who doesn't feel like they have the courage to have these conversations. I pray that you would help them to have them and to speak up. I pray for the person in the room, if they were really honest, they would say there is nothing that has really broken their heart yet. God, I pray that you would break their heart for something that matters and help them to lean into it. And God, I pray for all of us in the room that when we're tempted to see another person as an enemy, you remind us of our own humanity. God, that you would literally humble us before one another. And that, God, that you would bring us together and you'd help us to be united. And that you, through the work of the local church, people who are followers of you, people who aren't followers of you, would make this world a better place. And we would be passionate about that. It's in Jesus' name we pray.
The God of ages stepped down from glory. And out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Who believes that? Let's sing it again. There came the morning that sealed the promise. Come on! Your buried body being interred. And out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Jesus, yours is the victory. Hallelujah is the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. Salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. He's the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh God, you are my living
Hey, I want to say thanks so much for being here for this week, and for a lot of you for the last 2 weeks. Thanks so much for being a part of this. I want to let you know real quick, next week we're kicking off a brand new series, which I love. We're calling the series Overwhelmed. We're going to talk about what it feels like to be overwhelmed and how you overcome that. I don't know if anybody else has ever, anybody? Just me. Okay, great. So we'd love for you to be a part of that. And again, next week, we'll be doing a 3-week series on that. The other thing I want to let you know about is for those of you who are interested in Baby D, there's a meeting right after this service in room 200. We'd love to connect with you there about baby dedications. And if you're new or you're part of this, again, we'd love to get that card from you on your way out. And I'll be at the hub. I'd love to meet you out there. You'll see big signs for the hub out there. Again, thanks so much for being here. Overwhelmed next week. And hopefully you don't feel that way. Hope you come back for a series called Overwhelmed next week. See you soon. Thank you so much for watching online. We're so glad you decided to join us today. As I said, we're kicking off a brand new series next week called Overwhelmed. We'd love for you to be a part of this. We're talking about how you overcome the feeling of being overwhelmed. And so it's going to be a fun series. And I think most of us struggle with that at some point or another. So we'd love to invite you back for that. And if you're in Northern Michigan, we'd love to connect with you here at our Traverse City campus. It's fun to watch online. There's a completely different experience in the room. So we would love for you to be a part of that. So again, if you're in Northern Michigan or if you're in Metro Detroit area as well, we have campuses all over Metro Detroit and even in Orlando, Florida. So we'd love for you to join us live at one of those campuses. Also, if you're not following us on social media, we'd love to connect with you there. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Those are the best places to find out all that's happening at our church and even figure out some behind-the-scenes stuff about what's going on here. So we'd love to invite you to follow us there. Again, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you right back here next Sunday.